there it goes. There you go, Restream. Good job, you stupid little don't know how to do your job. Love it. There we are. Perfect. It be like that sometimes, unfortunately. What can you do? Technology kind of sucks. All right. So today, my friends, we've got some discussion planned. I guess this works out. YouTube people just missed out on the whole introduction, so they don't have to put up with all that. Anyways, we're going to talk about news today. I've got a deep dive planned where we're going to look at just kind of the development of missions and contracts in Star Citizen. And that'll take us from about 2018, 2019, which is really when they started actually focusing on contracts a bit more, all the way up until present day. And the missions that we're seeing in 4.1.1, which are building on some of the stuff that we heard about back then. Things like narrative and voice acting, you know, super complicated things that you just never see in video games. It's groundbreaking. We're also going to talk about the raft. The Argo Raft got a little bit of an update, and I know that's a bit of a topic. So we'll look at that. We'll go back to the beginning of the raft's development and kind of why it was designed this way, and then we'll take a little bit of a poll. We'll say a live poll opinion moment on whether or not we think what they're doing now is a good idea for that ship or not. Can you guys hear the crickets in the background? Or do I need to add these? I can always add some in. SC Stream thought we only did Halo here. I don't know what was I don't know what it was recently. What was it? I was talking about, it was one of the recent talks we had here. I don't remember what it was, but I brought up like a reference to Halo during the video, and somebody commented on the video and they're like, you gotta stop comparing Star Citizen to Halo. They're completely different games. And I'm like, brother, I'm not. I recognize that. That's easy enough to know. Bolton. Boltonator. Toes Gang. Starting the week off with 10 memberships. Thank you, dude. You know what that means. That means I don't know what it means. But thank you, dude. Thank you for... Ow! That doesn't mean I get shot. Oh my god. He didn't ask for that. We didn't ask for this. Sheesh. Where's, oh god. Oh my god, I can't remember his name. Oh my god, I can't remember his name. I remember his voice actor, Elias Tufexis. Why can't I remember... Oh, what's his name, guys? This is wild. Main character from the new Deus Ex movies, or games. Jason? No, that's the old guy. What is his freaking name? Whatever his name is, he didn't ask for this, and neither did we. Adam Jensen, thank you. Oh my gosh. What a shame. Well, thank you, Baltzen, for the memberships. Thank you, Zero and Tycho. And Mad Rhetoric for picking up on my lackadaisical Deus Ex knowledge. As I was saying, the plans for today, we're going over the raft. We're looking at the development of contracts. I'm thinking about dipping into a little segment about risk and reward, because this is kind of a good example of how they want to do risk and reward in this game. And then finally, there were just a couple other things that... Oh, you know what, actually? No. We got to talk about Starkitect today, folks. How'd I almost forget that? We should probably start out with that, because we talked about Planet Tech V5 last week, and then Starkitect was supposed to be... You know what? Hold up. Oh boy. Yeah, we've got a bit of a segment to go into with Starkitect. Let me get up some videos for that real quick. Where is it? Where is it? I'm completely drawing a blank here. Which one was it? This one.
Data.
All right. So if you're ever curious as to how the whole process of putting these deep dives goes, here it is. Find video. Open up Star Citizen YouTube channel. Search their channel for, I want to say, colonialism. I don't do that every time. That's just where we're going with this one. And I was wrong. Okay. Instead, what we could do is we can just scroll back all the way through their videos. There's so many. Brave New Worlds. Thank you, PK. Not much for risk in this game. Well, I'm not talking about risk right now. We're going to talk about risk in the future. What's supposed to be risk and reward. Right now, the system sucks. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. The risk and reward system is awful in Star Citizen right now. I don't honestly like both risks and rewards. I think are not great, but they're getting there. They're much better than they were. Much better. Like we're seeing a ton of progress. I just think the actual system itself is still, as far as the whole games industry goes and what I expect from Star Citizen, very lackluster. There is one specific video we're looking for here, and I think there it is. You can recognize it by the thumbnail.
The title.
The first introduction of the points of interest that basically make Star Citizen now. Toes. Read the main question. Will the gunplay ever get dialed like Arma 3? Right now it feels bad to mag dump people. It shouldn't take 75 bullets to kill someone, armor or not. I can't speak towards 75 bullets specifically, but it will probably, no, it won't be dialed like Arma 3. You're not supposed to die as much as you do in Arma 3. The way it's going to work is, I mean, you're going to put people down. You're not going to kill them. It's going to be, depending on how much armor that person is wearing, you put a certain amount of bullets into them. I do think that'll be dialed in much better than it is now, but it's going to be made in a way that allows players to feel that impact, receive that loss, and go down and be disabled, but not necessarily get murdered and die. Because murder is going to be a freaking huge crime in this game, and death is going to be a big penalty. So they got to make it something that doesn't happen too much. All right, there was one more. Crafting worlds. Is this it? I promise all these videos will pay off a bunch when we actually get around to, here we go, Rastar. When we actually get around to watching them. Do you think CIG has shifted their design strategy for building interiors away from what was previously discussed? Yes. Yes, but I'm waiting to make a video on it. I'm waiting for a little bit more proof because last time I presented that argument last year, it did not go over well. Just a lot of disagreement, but yeah, I do think that they've shifted away from what they originally said with building interiors to something that's a bit more deliverable. Sorry, this last part's taken a little while, but I promise it's important. fucking CitizenCon was that? Was it 2023? 2022? Must have been 2022. Whoa, how'd I get to 2019? Okay, it wasn't this one. '21? Life in the Verse. No, this is definitely like 2022 or 2023. Yeah, I think this is it. This is it. Yeah. That is not it. God dang it. I can't remember which video I'm looking for. Was it Into the Verse? '23. Yeah, I think it was 23. Yeah, it's 23.
Twice.
Dang it, man. This took me way too long. Yeah. Okay. Found my videos. So we'll start with that. Oh, that feels bad. PvP is gonna be soft. I think it's gonna be fun. Yo, we got a little bit of a hype train going on over on Twitch. I'm sorry I missed that. Thank you guys though. O2GB, Gigabyte, and Arctic Wolf with the 2 subs to start us off. Thanks. It's nice to not just be getting shot to start off the stream. What are we discussing today? No, nobody mentioned shooting. We've got a couple topics to get through today. Points of interest, mission development, maybe the raft, and a little bit of community discussion. Are the UGF still a thing? I'm going to be quite honest with you. I don't know. I wish I could say I did, but I don't anymore. Do we know how the jump seats work at 1.0? Jump seats? What do you mean how they work? Like, if you're supposed to sit in them while you're flying? The video by Tommy on review of Arma 3 and watch that. I don't think Star Citizen's gonna want to go towards Arma. They have this weird balance where if they lean too deep into any one part of the game, then the other parts start to get dragged towards it. Which I think is necessary for some parts of the gameplay, but not like that. Hello, Alex. How you doing? What do you mean soft PvP? I assume just like not as risky, not as death is the not as high consequence. They said they don't want it quite as hardcore as Arma. Yeah. More about game design and not about Arma. I see. Unloading whale. Hello. What's up with you today? Good to see you. Okay. So we have a couple of the last rewards from the Streamathon to do today. Actually, we have a giveaway too, huh? Yeah. Yeah. Giveaway's ending. We did hit the goals last. Yeah, we did hit the goals last stream, so the giveaway is ending from the Streamathon. But I also have to watch an old video of mine. So that's going to be miserable. Are we doing the paint thing today, or is that, yeah? Maybe Wednesday. Yeah. Yeah, we'll do the paint thing on Wednesday. I'm going to finish today's stream with watching Mrs. Tomato picked a video. This was one of the rewards you guys got on the Streamathon, and we didn't do it that night. This is the episode 1. Really? All right. So this is the YouTube series that kind of started off this channel, and she picked episode 1 for some silly reason. So we got to watch through this together and listen to me 6 years ago. God, I'm gonna hate that. Well, we can get to the good stuff first, yeah? Just interested in, needed to ask someone who is objective. I see. Well, yeah, I do think that it's never gonna really get to that point, just because it is important that things like medical gameplay need to be able to benefit from injuries, which is why most of the time when you shoot someone, they're gonna go down rather than die. If they die, then your medic can't really do anything, and that starts to kill medical gameplay. So they need it to be that when you get shot, you get injured, or you get some kind of a debuff, you go down, and you need someone to help you there and then. In that case, they gotta try and make sure that people aren't just dying all the time. His delivery and everything, looking for group squad. I would rather watch this than eat olives. That's for sure. Yeah, that's for sure. I'll take this any day. All right. Let us get to the first topic of the day. Ding. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Monday Mornings with Tomato. No, this is the first segment of our Monday streams where we just kind of talk about topics, about news, about what's going on, about how people feel. We've got a lot of topics today. We're looking at how missions have progressed over the years, looking at a little bit of chatter on Align and Mind stuff. We'll talk about Invictus expectations, but we're starting with points of interest. Last week, we talked about Planet Tech V5, which actually includes a big overhaul to points of interest, but we didn't really get to that. This week, we're going to jump into that part of it, and they are jokingly calling it Starkitect because CIG. But this is actually, in my opinion, a big reason why CIG should seriously consider scaling up the size of their planets. So, maybe they will, maybe they won't. They've kind of hinted at the possibility, but we're going to start all the way at the beginning. This is well before we even had, like, let me go back. Let's look back real quick at what was going on at the time that we're about to look at, because Star Citizen has changed so much since then, and yes, it's been a while, so it's not like that impressive, but it's easy to forget how freaking bare the game was at that time. So this is back in 2020, specifically, I think summer of 2020. 3.10 was coming out. What did 3.10 have in it? The ability to send money to each other. These are the features. These are the features that we were getting at that time. So it was like the game was still just getting some level of foundation. They were building the law system a little bit. They were working on turret stuff, methodology for targeting. This was actually back when they were also trying to force speeds to go down through gameplay mechanics, rather than just putting a cap on speed limits for SCM flight and ships. And then restricted area reworks, those were funny. They were adding new Babbage at the time. So Levski had just left, new Babbage had been added in, and we're still getting FPS weapons. But this was the time period here. And I think it wasn't too far before this. Maybe like just a few updates beforehand. Yeah, that they added the ability to rent ships into the game. Yeah. So we didn't even have an inventory at this time. You can see here the next update had the inventory. So like, it's hard. It's easy to look at Star Citizen now and be like, oh my god. And trust me, I still am. There's plenty of things in this game that I think we should have, but whew. Yikes. Hey, thank you for the sub over there on Twitch. Anonymous gifter. Gifting out an anonymous sub. You're anonymously appreciated. Oh, look. Oh, no, those are the ones with... Oh, no, that's right. It came with some. I thought those were the ones that it came with. Oops. All right. So, 2020. We didn't even have... All we had were bunkers. In fact, let me show you this video here. So, here's 2018. This is them talking about their first kind of ground-based points of interest we were getting missions in, and I kid you not, these we still play in, and they were only made because of a CitizenCon demo. Yes, they fit what was needed for Star Citizen, so they continued with them and used them, but in general, these locations were kind of designed for a very specific purpose.
The rest stops interiors have been set up.
We really wanted it to plug into the layout tool that's been used to create the rest stops that we've seen in previous ATVs.
You start with a library of rooms, and then those rooms get configured in different ways.
Okay, so first thing he said there already is that they are using the space station system to make this. And the space station system is not what they use to make ground locations anymore. They use Rastar, which we've talked about a lot. You can find tons of information about this. It is their own point of interest building system. They use it to make ground locations. You guys might remember, I think it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago, they actually had to come back into these ground locations and redo them. I'm not sure if that's even listed on here. But you might remember they had to come back into these ground locations and redo them with the Rastar system just to make sure that they worked. So here are the new derelict settlements that they made with Rastar. And then at some point they also just redid the bunkers. And it was like, it was just listed as a line item. It wasn't a big deal. But they had dedicated a whole Inside Star Citizen to talking about it. You guys can go back and watch that if you want. But that just goes to show how, like, back then they were building these systems and these locations and stuff with a system that was not meant for the actual game. All of this that they were doing back then was just to try and get people to play the game. Kind of like what they're doing right now. It's actually, it's interesting how we have that parallel. Right after 3.0, they were just focused on trying to get as many features into the game as they could to get people to stay interested. Now they're trying to get as much content into the game as they can to keep people interested. The same kind of energy.
So you can get a variety of layouts from the same set of rooms.
Once I had that layout, it was all about talking to the AI combat code guys and being like, what are the actions the AI can take? Of course, I can lay out this path, but it doesn't matter if I put like a massive wall in and expect the AI to bust through it if they can't do that. So I really had to take into consideration the skills and also the weapons the AI had. Because of course you have different ranges and all of this stuff. And the idea for that was that we'd have an end room, and that really dictated the layout and how all of the cover would work and how the player and the AI navigate in that space.
As we've seen in the PTU, we have combat AI in Korea right now. So Korea and the underground facilities were our first test cases. Before that, we only had test levels created by us, which were just like white box levels.
So we're literally seeing the beginning of FPS in Star Citizen here.
Greatest challenge here was ensure that the AI played to a realistic standard.
But I'm kind of getting into a completely different topic that I had lined up, which was the mission development. That was really just to give you guys an idea of this is what was... This is where things started in terms of points of interest in Star Citizen. Outside of landing zones, those bunkers were the very first. And now that I think of it, I actually want to pull up one more video just to drive that reference home. I believe I know where that'll be. Promise this one won't take forever. Yeah, here we go. So this is basically explaining why they made those facilities.
Let's talk about the original underground facilities. Now, the problem was we made these originally for the CitizenCon presentation demo, and the time we had wasn't enough to kind of take the location where we wanted it to
So that's kind of confirmation that it was made for the demo. Just
be. Now, it kind of fits the current purpose. It's fairly small in scale. It gives a multi-room layout opportunity for FPS combat, but we always knew we wanted it to be able to scale, you know, small, medium, large, to accommodate maybe 60 minutes of gameplay time per location.
okay.
So how do we go about
So
designing?
that is where it all began. All right. We got our baseline. We're at ground zero. Yes, they had a couple of outposts. No. Yeah, they had a couple of outposts that we used, like on Daymar in the Moons of a Crusader. But those bunkers, that was where it started. Now, let's move on from there. This is the very first time we saw any sort of point of interest development from Star Citizen as the new age of the game was starting, kind of.
Way into the Star Citizen persistent universe. Finally, several weeks ago, we showcased some initial concept explorations for homesteads, frontier housing to be found out in the wilderness areas of undeveloped planets and moons. And there were a lot to choose from. So the next step has been to turn some of those 2D sketches that we really liked into 3D sketches in Blender to further explore what to choose from.
Any of these that you guys like more? Actually, let's see if we can go back and find the video he's talking about so we can get a little bit more eyes on the... Yeah, because this isn't... I thought that was the first one. 2020. We're going to go back and look at those concepts because I want to know what you guys like, if you can spot the ones that you think they moved forward with, because these are the outposts we're seeing added to Pyro right now. That was the first real attempt at these. And it's funny that it took... What is this, 5 years? 5 years for them to get into the game? I always laugh at the idea that Pyro was going to be in the game in like 2022 because, well, these outposts were definitely not ready. So Pyro would have just been a bare wasteland that whole time. All right, where? Oh my gosh. See, now this is the episode that I don't think I know I can pick out where these concepts would be.
There was a lot of technology.
Oh, hey, remember I told you there was supposed to be a disc? I just randomly landed on this.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, wow.
I like a saucer. I like that.
That's wild.
What
Wait,
makes it?
Argo. This was an Argo. This was the first concept for Argo, and they didn't get into the game. I think Execute was looking for this too. Let me go ahead and link this over to him.
Abandoned ship concept.
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know. Let's listen in.
Technology and shape language came from that ship. And so it was super useful. That basically is informed a lot of the SRV and the mold. So everything is...
I don't know. He didn't say why.
I really like
It's
the
interesting.
way it open.
Yeah, that's an interesting ship. I haven't seen that in a while. But that's not what we were looking for. We're looking for outposts. It's so easy to get distracted doing these kinds of runs because there's just so much forgotten stuff back here. Nope, not that one. And you really gotta just like run through these super quick. I know this is towards the end of the... There we go. Found it. Oh, hey, look! Look at this!
Creation.
Oh my god! Wait, this is also the very first time we ever saw these rock formations. And these are the Pyro 2? I think... no, Pyro 3. I think these are on Monox. And this is the first time we saw these too. Man, so much of like what went into the game this last year started back at this time. It's crazy. Okay, so here are those 2D sketches.
Returning down planetside, early concept explorations are underway on the creation of homesteads. habitats and homes for NPCs that may one day dot across the surface of planets and moons throughout the Stanton system and beyond.
This gives me Oblivion vibes. You guys ever watch that movie? Freaking love that movie. And what's the best part about that movie? Tom Cruise. No, don't shoot me. I'm not Tom Cruise. Jesus. I love that movie though.
Now these thumbnail sketches are an invaluable first step in any concept process.
I think you can kind of see where this would have gone to Pyro.
And as usual, they're explorations only. That means that while
sketch
several
3
of them may be chosen to make the next step into full-on development, the reality is that many of these may die here as solid examples of simply what we don't want.
Dude, like these are such, look at this. Oops. Wrong one. This is so just straight out of Oblivion. I love this. I really hope we see stuff like this. That like bulbous, weird, monolithic structures they did in that movie.
Want to do. Such is the way for thumbnail sketches.
All right. So those are the sketches. And then from there, we finally moved on. They moved on to this.
And to wrap things up this week.
Oh, no, sorry. Still the wrong video. Man, I'm just not doing a good job of this. Where the heck? Guys, what's going on here?
Well, a
Here we
lot to
go.
choose from. So the next step has been to turn some of those 2D sketches that we really liked into 3D sketches in Blender, to further explore the shape language, to see these things from as many different angles as possible, and to begin to build out a library of kitbash options for us to play with.
This
At
was
this
around the
stage,
time.
One of the main things we're looking for in fleshing out this colonial architectural vibe visually is that it looks like it can survive in many different climates. Perhaps with a patchy motif that indicates generations of use instead of the outright replacement of components that could keep them looking newer. As far as shape language, these efforts will also be used to help us land on a specific direction of cubical, conical, spherical, or some mix therein. Like most concepts, these visual explorations are just as important in figuring out what we do want as determining what we do not. Also under consideration are the materials that would be used to make these structures, as there's a desire within the team here to make the materials found in the walls or rooftops appear as if they were sourced from the planet where any homestead is found whenever possible. Overall, this is one of the most enjoyable periods for any concept artist, a time where it's more about exploring primitive forms and building shape relationships between core elements, researching traversal options and how they'll settle within the environment around them, and perhaps most importantly, working hand in hand with system designers to identify all the necessary gameplay components and the relational hierarchy necessary between them, so that when development of this feature really kicks into high gear, we'll all be creating something from the ground up that can build upon and utilize the full complexity of the resource generation and item control system we discussed last quarter on Calling All Devs that is currently in development for ships, vehicles, and space stations alike.
So that is, I think, one of the more interesting parts of this is that we're like the resource network that we kind of have only really focused on in the last year, and is still not even in the game, is being considered at the concept stage for these locations. And that is not something CIG would have done prior to this. I mean, that's something we can see in a lot of the old locations. They're just not made to work with that kind of system. And freaking thank God they did, because you just don't want to like get these locations and then be like, okay, now I got to update them so that they work with the power systems that we've created. I'm just glad they were at least considering that. This is around the time, though, everybody was like, okay, these seem like they're meant to kind of be like Tatooine a little bit. You got the vibe a little bit there. Can't imagine why. Alrighty.
So what did we learn about this week?
What did we learn? Dude, his audio has gotten so much better since then. So that's the beginning stages of these places being built out. Now we jump forward a little bit and we're talking a little bit more about specialized locations. And these got me a lot more interested back then because these actually started to, if you look over here on the right, they referenced the interaction points. So you could see that they were starting to consider the gameplay, how these would fit maybe into the resource network or missions or contracts that you had to do at these locations.
And to wrap things up this week, let's check in once again with the team working on colonialism-style homesteads. And we have some additional concepting for a variety of add-ons to be found throughout the various encampments, like these cooling stations for enormous server racks, power plants with varying arrays of subcomponents like antenna, piping, displays, ladders, and more.
Kind of funny because I do see these assets at Pyro, but they're not interactive right now.
Subcomponents like antenna, piping, displays, ladders, and more. Fuel tank arrays with a variety of blockouts altering the way in which they connect with one another as they expand out across the horizon.
Yeah, we blow these up.
Solar array add-ons for both the power plants we saw before and habitat buildings themselves.
Actually a bit annoyed that these don't have fuses in
Refinery
them.
units. And finally, potential blockouts for combining many of those aspects into outdoor storage yards that will form the basis for a wide variety of NPC and player experiences in the future.
This is like this. A lot of this is foundation for things even like distribution centers. You know, this refinery, like you can tell that this is part of the distribution center exteriors. So this stuff did go to more than the outposts, but overall, this was just a big part of the process of, I think, them getting their pipeline together to start creating libraries for ground locations. And hopefully they can expand to other types of archetypes, or yeah, architectural archetypes. We've seen that Castra is coming along. Castra is henoistic in nature rather than utilitarian. I'm sure you all are more than aware of my my little diagram. It's not mine, I saved it. But it's one that they released. It's official for the game. And it's meant to contextualize what these locations represent based on... Man, why are you opening my pictures in Affinity? Computers, you know. Let me close this and use something a little bit easier to look at that at. So this is the timeline for human development in Star Citizen. I'm going to add music to this so I'm not awkward. And you can see that this right here is literally the Rayari outpost from the current game. So we know we have high-tech architecture, and we kind of can see it in Microtech too a little bit. We know we have utilitarian architecture because, like, look at ArcCorp and Lorville. They're very into that. It's just like exposed piping and stuff like that. That's also going to be at Levski. Colonialism architecture, if you didn't catch on, is what Jared's been talking about this whole time. Frontier vibe, natural resources, he even mentioned. It's all about where did the resources come from. Derelict archetypes, we know that because we have derelict outposts in the game. So those three are taken care of, somewhat, in some ways. And Henoism is bunker style, conveys security. This happened during the time of the Messers when we were at three different wars. We had 2 wars with the Tavaran and a Cold War with the Xi'an at the time, I think. So everything was very war related, and you guys saw that when they introduced Castra during CitizenCon. So that'll be 4 architecture types by the time we see Castra. And they are trying to find ways, I think, to both make assets that fit these archetypes for outposts. They're going to have to make them for cities, like Lorville, or what's the one that's called? Cascom? And just in general for the high-tech cities like Microtech. And then they also have to hit those other ones that we saw. There are like 2... God dang, Affinity again. There are, I think, 2 or 3 other Streamline, Metaclassicism, and Supermodernism that they'll have to flesh out as well. And maybe that changes, but that's at least what they laid out back then. So back to this.
Now we'll start learning more about how these homesteads will begin being integrated into the persistent universe in the coming months. So what?
That was a teaser of Rastar. So moving on from that, I'm going to make a huge jump ahead. That was 2021. We're jumping forward to 2023. At this point, we had started to see... Actually, hold on. We can maybe not jump forward quite that far just yet. I could show you what they wanted to show us as an update real quick. Here. So from there, they did a lot of work on it. Things really started to speed up at one point, and they actually went and made a little bit of a sizzle reel just to give an idea of what it's going to look like in the actual game. All right, rest of this is just space stations. You get the idea. So that was a little bit of an ad for where they were going with the ground locations. And that was 2022. From there, we obviously got more updates on Inside Star Citizen and stuff, but really the next big update was finally this presentation at CitizenCon in 2023. I'm gonna let him do a lot of the talking here because I think this is actually one of the more important talks to show the direction they're going in with this. It'll be echoed again the following year with the whole point of this talk, which is Starkitect. But really it starts here in how they're explaining the way that they're developing these ground locations. We'll jump in here every now and then.
So all of that beautiful tech, all of those features that we've seen in the last 2 days is coming from our tech development builds. Now, all those features are going to make their way to you, of course, eventually. But that is the reason you're not going to see some of them in the builds today. I just wanted to get ahead of the comments a little bit there. So with that said, what am I going to be talking about? Well, I'm really excited to show you that the hard work that the Sandbox One team have been doing to expand our new outpost locations. I'm going to start by going over how we've expanded the library and what that means we can now achieve with the new locations, and then how we achieve that variety from the library by categorizing our locations into both archetypes and themes, and what that means for you as a player. So, I don't know if you remember this, but at CitCon in 2021, we showed this new style of outpost for the first time. Now,
that is a video we should have watched before this.
At this point, we had our art style locked in. We'd worked on our library of content to the point where we could make smaller locations like this one, but with a limited amount of variety between each one. And this is...
Okay, this is, I think, the biggest thing that they're trying to do. This is what I meant by the whole expanding the different archetypes thing. We can't, like, we're going to have a whole bunch of star systems using these assets, right? So they've got to expand these like crazy. And I think this is a good first showing, but as we'll see with Starkitect, it's got to go much further.
This is what that library of modules looked like at that point. We'd established our main building modules as well as some of our larger buildings and a number of smaller secondary and dressing and standalone modules. But each outpost couldn't be too large without there being some obvious repetition between the modules used. So let's have a look at that library today. So, In order to achieve that greater visual and design delta between each outpost and have them not feel like exact clones of one another, we've massively expanded our module library in terms of breadth and depth. And what I mean that, we go broad by making more modules with different purposes, and we go deep by creating multiple thematic overlays for each of those modules as well. And I'll go into what that means a little bit in a minute. But the challenge of a sandbox location like this, as you can see, it's not about building a single unique location. That can be quite straightforward, to be fair. It's about giving our artists and designers the building blocks, the affordance to build multiple locations that all feel somewhat different, even if they do share that same basic DNA. So it's about creating both the ingredients at the same time as the recipes, and making sure all of those flavors work in harmony with one another for both visuals and gameplay. So every individual part has to take into consideration all of those design philosophies. So every single module has to take into consideration those design philosophies that Khan mentioned. But we also have to make sure that they work with those same principles when an artist or a designer combines them into any one of a number of different layouts. So the more ingredients we have to work with, the more recipes we can create. But with that complexity comes the challenge of keeping everything harmonious.
I wish that we got to see this for the utilitarian art style. Colonialism's cool, like it fits Pyro and it looks nice and all that and it's natural stuff, whatever, but utilitarian stuff, especially old utilitarian stuff on moons with like the weathering and stuff, I don't know, there's something nice about that, something crunchy sci-fi about it. Can't wait to see new outposts that are not colonial, but are also larger than like the little stilt one-room outposts that we have in Stanton right now. What's up, Space Marine? Mihai, Hustle. Welcome in, guys. Matt Sully, good to see you. Not too late, my friend. Still plenty to go.
We like to think we've done a pretty good job with that, but that's me. Using this expanded library, we've been able to increase the individual location size because there's less of that obvious repetition between buildings within any single location. And we can't really call some of these large locations outposts anymore. They become something more like settlements and imply a larger and more established community. Now, as a player, it will mean a lot more to explore and do at any single individual location with a localized and personal feeling mission types that might see you moving around a single settlement to complete objectives or doing short hop missions between clusters of settlements on a single planet. So you might head up to a ridge to repair some wind turbines. You could counter an outlaw attack from a neighboring outpost, or on the opposite side, you might be stealing or destroying vehicles for the criminal gang that you're working for. But in the art department, we always say show, don't tell. So let's stop looking at slides and let's have a look at some of the locations in game.
Honestly, I'm still waiting for that kind of mission combinations. Like, they're there, and it's just that the handyman missions don't work well enough, and the mission spawning still isn't localized enough. We're so close to that, but it still doesn't do that. And I can't wait till it does, but man, they really got to get that working. You guys, we know these locations now. I still don't see them that much because I just think Pyro really needs, there are like multiple things that I think need some more help to make Pyro play smoothly. It's still kind of just in this place. Dang it, I'm sorry, I realized that the music was playing the whole time. It's still just in a place where it's like fun to see, fun to look at, not quite cohesive just yet. But that was just a little bit of a look at where they were going with the locations. Now, this is the more interesting part, how they're going to kind of diversify them.
Thank you. So, what flavors of outposts did we just see there? Well, we categorize them in two different ways, as I said, and then we mix and match those categories together to provide that variation. Now, the first and primary category is the archetype, and they provide that core gameplay hook and define the main function of a settlement. So scrapyards have a landing pit module for repairs and refueling. Mining operations can have a refinery module and ore extractors for resource and commodity trading. And trading posts themselves allow a broader range of item purchases through the...
I'd like to point out that they also earlier this year made a distinction between outposts and depots. They are now defining depots as single-purpose small locations, kind of like what we have in Stanton right now, where you land there and it's basically just a trading depot, and you can get some stuff and then take off, as opposed to outposts, which are like more of the kind of multi-purpose towns where you can maybe get a repair, get something to trade, also find some NPCs, possible mission givers, and some things to do.
The dedicated trade building module. And I mentioned earlier some more like general mission types that you might find that would be agnostic of archetype. And the archetypes themselves reflect that primary gameplay function of a settlement, but there's also a middle layer. Of course, we don't want these locations to just be a glorified shop or repair station. So there's to be more secondary activities to do locally to an outpost that are also defined by its archetype. So you may find scrapyards can offer salvage-related gameplay and missions. Trading posts can also offer delivery missions or hauling and cargo gameplay. And farms can offer crops and fauna as resources for gathering or trading. So with archetypes as our primary category, in addition, we mix in a secondary category, and these are the thematic overlays. Now, at the moment, we have two main themes. Internally, we call these independent and outlaw. So themes offer additional variation on top of the archetypes to inform the look and feel of a location. Not just
Dude, this
visually,
thing just looks like
but
this thing just looks like a gigantic pizza oven. Like these pirates are just making the bombest 5 cheese pizzas in here, and then you come in and murder them all, and you're the criminal.
People you'll interact with there, how they'll respond to you based on your rep, what types of missions you'll have available to take on. So themes don't change the fundamental architecture of a space or the archetype of a location, but they do drastically alter the mood and feel, as well as altering the gameplay experience significantly. And again, let's take a look at the first of our themes, our independent theme.
That was actual Space Pizza Hut. Just got a gigantic ship weapon on my bookshelf. Grandma, can you pass the friggin' tarantula, please? Oh, and then this thing.
Cool.
Yay!
So, as a neutral player, the independent theme presents a much more social, visual, and gameplay experience. The primary visual read across both themes, so across both Outlaw and Independent, comes from those common architectural forms, and they're generally all more rounded and soft in shape, and the building manufacture techniques are more robust and primitive, with single-story dwellings built from stucco and bare metal. But for this theme specifically, we use soft textiles, warm lighting and color palettes, foliage, decoration that layer on top of those utilitarian structures to give that sense of home. And I use the word home for our independent theme quite a lot because we really want to get that feeling that this is home for the people that live there despite those harsh realities of frontier life. And in contrast to that, we have a theme that lies in a direct opposition to the independence, which we call the outlaw theme. So let's take a look at that now as well.
Edgy. Outlaws aren't soft, they're hard. Sorry. There's the pizza kitchen. Oh, they got meats too. Nice. Nice. He gonna die.
So the outlaw theme tells that story of these once functional settlements being completely overrun by the various criminal elements that inhabit the system. And visually, we have themes of a regressed and subverted civilization. So we layer on top of the architecture these spiked and aggressive forms, and we have evidence of a squalid living arrangements, and lighting comes from fires or poorly maintained fixtures. Some spaces are going to be recognizable as deformed versions of the independent theme, but some have been completely changed to more nefarious purposes. And while
like
both themes employ
pizzas.
all of the various alternative pathing and traversal considerations that Khan detailed just earlier, the outlaw spaces are weighted more towards combat. But just because these spaces are more dangerous and the experience can be more combative, that doesn't mean that the archetype of the outpost is lost. So if you as a player choose to be a criminal working up your rep with a headhunter gang, you'd be welcome at the trading posts, and you'd be able to buy and sell items or take on missions. But you probably won't then be very welcome at the independent-themed locations, and that's where you'd get your combat experience.
That's what people hate.
So
they're like, wait, no, I want to go everywhere.
While the outlaw theme looks very different, the functionality of those archetypes still remain. So I've talked about the kinds of outposts we've been hard at work on, and I hope you've enjoyed checking them out over the last 2 days in the Pyro demo. It's really made me very pleased to see people playing our content at last. So
all right. So that was kind of the Pyro outposts with the colonialism style on an update. Here's sort of what they were doing in terms of Stanton, which was actually, I think, just an offshoot of the same stuff. It's still derelict style outposts. I think this was just an easy win if they put them in Stanton as well.
These new locations. More. Our goal with these locations, as with many of the others we're going to hear about today, is to continue to work on the gameplay so that every location offers a rich playground to explore. And I guess I'd like to finish just by thanking everyone for listening today. It's really great to see you all. And I'm going to pass you over to Nick, who's going to talk about some locations that are coming in the nearer future. Thank you.
You guys made an awesome work. I'm super happy and proud to be here today to show you that, all of you guys and to the world. So let's go to the chase and let me present you the new derelict settlement.
All right. So we've been playing this for, I think, 2 years now. And was it 2 years? No, these came right after this. These were, man, I don't even know when these were added. But we have had these for longer. And the point behind these was really just to increase the points of interest in Stanton with locations that weren't, like I said before, single room bunker sort of places. This was somewhere they could put more NPCs around. They could spread out the player base a little bit more with locations that actually took time to get around. They perform terribly though. I mean, I don't know if these are performing better. I haven't used them as much in the last like 6 months, but these were performing awful for a while just because of all the assets in there. But again, it's still part of that effort to just keep building out libraries of locations and assets and things that they can add to different locations eventually that will populate other star systems. Yeah, these were rough for a while. Are they working better now? Yay! You've been going there for missions lately and they work like the rest of the game? They're running better? That's good. If they're able to optimize the locations, that's good. Oh yeah!
Pretty cool, guys, eh? Oh, by the way, we made more than 4. It's not just 4. We made more than that. So we split those settlements into categories, social and hostile.
All right, I think you guys have gotten the ideas from this. Now, let me show you an example of what a new point of interest looks like that's not being developed for a library or assets or anything like that. I don't know if this is really how they're going to build locations to look. I think they also made the rendering in this development or this little demo look better. The graphics look better. The lighting looks better. This is all future technology. So I wouldn't look at this and decide, oh, every place that we visit is going to look like this. But I do think that this is a little bit of a look at where they want these points of interest to go. What I'm getting from this is mainly just that it is a lot more of a self-contained location. The outposts we know now are placed onto the ground, and generally there's not much more effort put into them. With this, you can tell that there's more of an attempt to make an actual area, something akin to what we've seen from the base building development, where you can put down full ground panels that allow for a more structured surface. And we could see that there's a building here that looks like it would probably have a decent sized interior. Some different systems that I won't say are going to be powered by the resource network, but they probably will be, because that's how points of interest are going to be applied into the game. So I do think this gives us a little bit of insight into where they're going to go with these locations. These look a lot more built up, structured, and less like temporary outposts that have been sitting on the moon for less than 2 years, you know? Now, with that being said, comes the most, I'm going to say it's the most important part of this part of the video, but I actually have a little excerpt from here. This is a talk we're going to go into when we're talking about the missions and contracts later. But I think this also applies really well to the locations that we're talking about now, because this kind of lays out the whole philosophy behind how they want to apply missions to the game.
Always nervous about philosophy. Mm-hmm. Okay, so
the philosophy going forward is that we try and keep make enough content to fill a planetary system to keep you there for a good long while.
That's the important part. I'll let him keep going, but I think that statement itself is super important to Star Citizen as a whole, because one of the things people hate is having to fly. I mean, I complain about it all the time while I'm playing, having to fly from planet to planet to planet for gameplay.
So we're aware, travel times are a big investment and quite dangerous sometimes as well. So what we're going to do is, I take like Crusader, right? It's the first planetary system we built, and I'm sure everyone will be able to see that it's a lot more dense with content than the other planets. We want to get the other planets up to the kind of same parity with Crusader, and beyond, obviously. But,
and just for folks who maybe haven't been with the project since 2.0, Crusader, we're talking about the space around Crusader,
the space,
not the planet, which is
the
still
planet
pending.
and its 3 moons.
Yeah.
You'll notice there are like space stations in there that don't exist elsewhere. They are kind of legacy things, these one-off builds that I'm sure we'll get to later, like how we're going to have abandoned rest stops and things like that. So we'll soon be making huge leaps forward in the content and the locations that we can add to the other systems.
Some leaps. Some leaps. So that is the driving philosophy, and that was actually stated before all these other videos that we've watched. So since he said that, they've been working on the libraries and getting that all together. But really it culminates in Starkitect, which is seems like what they want to be their solution for making enough points of interest that you can have planetary systems that provide you with the gameplay you want to have. And that seems to be what they're going with here. So here is a talk from last year. We'll look at this and then kind of talk about how this fits into everything else we've watched.
Thank you. Hello, CitizenCon. All right. Those new planets and biomes were pretty, right? But it's time for phase-free civilization to give you some stuff to do. So, let's talk about location density. We've emulated nature as well as we can to make sure our planets are physically based and realistic, and our biomes are emergent. But it's time to start populating the verse, because where there's people, there are their lives and the structures they build. So it makes sense that whenever you go and explore these planets, that you find their lives. And what's even more important is that when we make these structures, that they use and they follow the same rules as our biomes, such as the jungles and the swamps. But before we continue, let's first take stock as to where we are now. At the moment in the verse, we have these custom, beautifully made locations, such as Ghost Hollow, we've got our distribution centers, or even just some outposts. And these have all been handcrafted by our designers and artists to hit that benchmark. And they've been working directly on the planet. However, going forward, this doesn't really scale with how we want to go forward with the game. Server meshing is about to arrive, and we're going to have a way higher player count. So those 73 bunkers across Stanton just won't cut it. But in general, it's also pretty barren.
This is already true.
There's not much for you to explore and find stuff out there. So there's no exploration gameplay. You haven't really put your character to use for the way that you should. So this means we need to go bigger, which means we need to change our workflow. And with any workflow means we need to first establish a new benchmark.
What's up, Shadowfire?
So, with our new benchmark, we are ensuring quality and improve on our previous work and make it even better. And any location that you'll find needs to have its own unique personality and no repetition. We don't want you to find the same location twice. This also means that this is your exploration and your findings. So when you go out there and explore with your Carrack or with your Corsair, is that whatever you find, you can share with your orgs or with your friends. As for density, if you fly down to the planet, we want you to find something, let's say, every 100 clicks. But also improve the mission experience. So when you stay more on the planet, you're more immersed and you go from location to location. Just keep going. So going forward, we are modularizing all our existing locations and assets. And we're basically making a library of buildings and layouts that we'll be using to no longer work directly on the planet. The neat thing, all these modules and assets can be iterated upon and tested right in the editor for all the designers and artists to ensure fun gameplay and interactive sandbox activity, and also make sure all the mission stuff is there. Basically, we're building a toolkit. So let's look at some of the things that we need to keep in mind as we are making that toolkit. First and foremost, we've got our art style and branding. We've got things like Frontier for our settlements. We've got...
See these? See these two over here? I want them dead. Actually, I don't. They can stick around, but Jesus, I want to see them so much less in this game.
High-tech for the emergency shelters, but also utilitarian, like our bunkers and distribution centers. The richer the data...
So these are here's the three different types of architecture they have now. What's missing here is Henoism, which I think is the next one.
Richer these locations will be. Secondly, they all have a function. We've got mining for our mining outposts, farming for the farmsteads, or just places where people live. The function of the place will define the way the place looks as well, and its form. And last but not least, the people as well, the faction and their loadouts. We've got lawful people, like the new Citizens for Prosperity in Pyro, unlawful, such as Xenofred, and sometimes not even no one. And the place needs to look a bit, derelict. In different places, you'll find different people. So, now that we've made our toolkit and we've defined all this new stuff, let's start building thousands of locations. Yes, I said thousands. So, to avoid the same issue of working on directly in the planet, I'd like to introduce to you Starkitect.
Hold on, I got one for
Starkitect
this.
allows us to do is directly on a planetary scale scatter all these new libraries and modules and assets and no longer work directly on the planet. And it uses the same logical rule set as our emergent biomes. And it also gives us full control over the data that we set on these locations. So expect locations in places where they make sense. Let's kind of look at all this new Genesis data and all these new libraries and chuck it into Starkitect and see what it gives us. As you can see, we're now able to make full-size locations, and they will look completely different based on where you'd find them. The layouts are controlled by the rules, and it will reflect its place in the verse. We've got farms, mining outposts, but even our older locations, such as the bunkers that you find on Stanton.
Yeah, honestly, Lucid, I doubt that would be the case. Enough content for their whole career around a planet? I don't know, man. I mean, yeah, maybe it could be for a while, but that'd get boring after some time. Like this, I understand what they're going for here. Everything is different. Different factions, different storylines, different planets, different ages of the locations. That's going to lead to a ton of variety, but it's still going to be repetitive at some level. Like there's only so much you can do.
We've got farms, mining outposts, but even our older locations, such as the bunkers that you find on Stanton.
It shouldn't get boring if they do enough, but like nobody's a miracle worker. I just can't see how a video game can possibly never grow stale at some point if you're in the same location all the time. Unless they're adding regular content to that location. But if you're talking about, let's say 15 star systems and you're saying, well, I want to focus on one planet, what are the chances that CIG is always going to be able to keep things fresh around that one planet as opposed to multiple locations? Not saying somebody shouldn't try to do that, just that I don't know about a whole career around one planet in this game.
So, let's look at an example and kind of use the tool to really, make a location. We can define the rules, as I've mentioned a couple times by now. So for our mining outpost, it wants to be near a resource. We can specify what this resource needs to be. But we can also give suggestions where sometimes you'd find it here and sometimes you wouldn't. If the location has refineries, it might want to be near water to refine the resources. Then secondly, we can define what buildings should be there. So obviously we need mining buildings, houses for people to live as well, and even power buildings that we can leverage with the resource network. Starkitect will intelligently figure out where to place these and what needs to be at the location. Next up, farms. Its rules, well, temperature. Not every plant can live in every temperature, but the same with soil type. Only certain plants can be in certain grounds. And then we can query the seed map to determine what plants you would find there. What are the harvestables? As for the targets, again, farm buildings, obviously, power buildings.
The seed map! I mean, it makes sense, though. Especially because we can already see from the collection missions we're getting, you have to go to certain places to get certain things. If you know that there is an outpost that has a specific crop that you need to do a specific mission, and other people don't know that, I mean, that's your knowledge of the seed map. That's your knowledge of how the planet works. It's your knowledge of the economy. And you can get a leg up, hand up, a finger up, maybe. We'll say a leg up.
Buildings, houses, but even animals, such as our beloved quasi-grazers. And last but not least, derelict ships. We've got these all over the place currently. Rules, well, they'd be close to anti-air because I would be shot down. But even in harsh flight conditions, such as mountains or low visibility, you'd probably most commonly find them. Targets, well, crash ship parts, of course. Sometimes you'd find the full remains of a javelin, and the other time you might just find the nose of a starfarer laying around. So, let's talk about coherency. Sure, we can scatter all these locations everywhere on the planet, and you'll find them in places they make sense, but we can do better. You don't just want to find an outpost completely on its own, right? We want to make sure it really feels like people have built their lives here. So, let's talk about some missing bits. We want to tell tighter stories, such as the people's lives, but also logical exploration. If I find one thing, I expect to find something similar or something else nearby. We also need more data control. What defines one mining outpost being different from the other ones, aside from the harvestables? And also give the narrative developments. Make sure people build near rivers, on mountains. They build near town halls. They build near distribution centers.
Honestly, I think this is kind of where they're going with these combat missions. I don't think they're quite there, and they need more mission givers and maybe more faction kind of developed missions, but these, I think we're seeing this before we see the actual location developments, because that sounds like that tool is still a ways out, while their contracts and the narrative content stuff that they're talking about here is actually starting to come into the game already.
But also logical exploration. If I find one thing, I expect to find something similar or something else nearby. We also need more data control. What defines one mining outpost being different from the other ones, aside from the harvestables? And also give the narrative developments. Make sure people build near rivers, on mountains. They build near town halls. They build near distribution centers. So to hit that bit of our benchmark, we make sure that locations are near each other and group them together. The effect it gives is a fully developed landscape with vistas and points of interest all over. And we group them together in what we like to call a cluster, like this one, that has 13 locations.
This is something that they're starting to do. Mainly in Pyro, we're seeing this. I'm actually kind of surprised sometimes, too, when I'm flying into Pyro, because it used to be not too difficult to see all the little small locations cluttered throughout. But if you're heading to an outpost here, you will find little tiny things here and here and out here and over here. And you don't notice them unless you see them by eye, because the scanning system right now is just not great. But I imagine at one point when you can detect all these locations, there will be things to do at each of them. And that's really exciting. I agree with you guys when it comes to the whole, they have plenty of space to throw content into these locations. I'm just hesitant as to how long it can last, but there's no doubt in my mind that at the very least, you're going to be able to get days, if not weeks, out of just spending your time in like one area on one planet, building bases, doing crafting, finding resources, developing those resources, shipping them out, making money. It's a lot of opportunities with a system like this. I'm going to remain cautiously optimistic that they can pull something like this off. It would be very cool, but I'm still waiting to see what the next time they even talk about this is, because this is the last time they really went into detail, and this was in October. Town halls? Yes. Plenty of town halls, you know? Everybody's got a town hall. Plenty of minerals down there. You got a little water well, a couple gold stashes, you know. Good spot.
Let's talk about clusters. Clustering means generating locations near other locations. So, for example, if you find a distribution center, just like in the verse currently, I would find forward operating bases next to them. But if you go even further out, you'd find mining outposts to funnel those resources to the FOBs. Go out even further, you'd find caves around them, because that's where they might find some of the gems. And then we can even specify the data on a cluster level.
This is also kind of exploration gameplay. I'm not sure how often they're going to have derelicts and things like that popping up, but you'll definitely be able to, these caves, you can probably go out and remap them to, like, the resources will probably respawn and stuff. These will be the opportunities where you can go out to these locations, do some scans, take those scans back to a central spot and sell them for some money. And I think that is a part of how exploration gameplay is going to work.
All of the factions that live at this whole cluster, any mining outpost, that would be the same people, but also what commodities they sell, to find on what resource you'd find. So let's look at an example of the clusters. We have our mining cluster. Again, we can define what rules we should have. Rules, well, near a resource, just like our mining outpost, but also it needs to be on a lawful planet. We can target on a planetary scale where they would need to be. They need protection. As for the targets, well, caves, mining outposts, but even trade posts. Let's go to the other side of the spectrum. Before I do so, I forgot data. We can, on a cluster level, specify, again, what mineral commodities, but also what harvestable types you'd find are in that region. Now let's look at the other side of the spectrum, an unlawful cluster. What rules? Well, they need to be far away from any other cluster, because they want to be isolated and do their evil deeds on their own. And also on an unlawful planet, such as somewhere in the Pyros system. For the targets, outlaw outposts, crash ships, because they would shoot them down, and also ruins from just places they just completely overrun.
These are probably the kinds of locations you can have respawn and move around a lot more, especially in a place like Pyro, where they're basically saying, oh yeah, these places, they're always at war, they're always getting wiped out. This place is now this factions, that place is now that factions. And I wonder if you can actually change factions in these places, or if you just, you go in, you wipe everybody out, you take it over, and then you come back the next day and it's the same group of people at the same location. That's something we still really don't know how deep they're going to go on when it comes to reputation and security.
The data on this one, you'd find specific loadouts, and they'll be using weapons that you wouldn't find in any other legal system. And these weapons will be sold at the shops in these regions. So, now that we have a cluster, let's go even bigger. Just like our locations, we can put clusters near other clusters, and we group them together, ranging between 10 to 15 locations each. And we group this into what we call a sector.
Okay, I didn't.
Like this one.
Forgot it was a sector. That's pretty cool, though. I mean, sure.
That has about 120 locations. However, on a planetary scale, we can define how many sectors we should have, with each their own data and persona. And every single one of these locations is now ready for the mission system to hook up and give you gameplay, and for you to find a bunch of places on your own. And just on this side of the planet, Can you guess the number? We've got about 3,042 locations.
And honestly, that is like, that's a lot of places for a planet. Like, you would want a planet to still have a lot of empty space.
This means that Starkitect, we're just able to...
So this whole system, this Starkitect system, is, I think it's interesting. And it's ambitious. And this could be incredible for Star Citizen. I mean, this could be the next step on top of their already pretty impressive planet tech that makes these planets make sense in a way that I don't think any other game of this scale has. This scale, I mean, like a game where you're going to different planets. I know, it's weird comment. I just don't know how viable it is. Like a lot of last year's CitizenCon, this was sort of like a proof of concept talk. And I love the concept and I love the ideas behind it. It makes complete sense going off of everything else that we've watched through the course of their point of interest development. They're clearly trying to build out a bunch of different type of locations that they can easily replicate across spaces. But this is a little bit different from, say, when Will Haynes River Guy came on and showed us the new river creation tool. And he walked us through first how he was able to make a single river. Then he came back 6 months later and showed us how he was able to make those rivers better. And then he came back 6 months after that and he showed us how he was able to hit a button and the computer would do the same thing he had done 12 different times across a planet automatically. We didn't really get to see that here with this. We didn't get to see them say, okay, here's what Rastar will do, click, and then it creates a whole bunch of outposts. Yeah, with roads between them and a connective economic network. So this could be really cool in terms of putting the locations down, but it hasn't really been proven out as an actual process yet, or as an actual tool. And it also, I'm not sure it's gonna work with like the rest of the game. Like, is it just locations? Let's go back and take a look at what they wanted to do for Quantum, now known as Star Sim. The idea behind this was that every location in the game would hook into an economy that would simulate the passing of industry between those locations. The haulers, the security folks defending those haulers, the pirates preying on those haulers, the money that translates across the system, and the differences that makes in supply and demand at each of those locations. This was Tony Z's big thing, and while he worked a lot on it, and the team has worked on it, they have renamed it to Star Sim, and they're doing stuff with it that we don't really know that much about. They haven't gone into the detail as to how this will work, so I don't even know how much of this supply and demand system is still planned. But to give you an idea of what, if we were to take what they originally wanted to do with the economy and plug it into what they're talking about with this point of interest location maker Starkitect, listen to this for a bit and just imagine what that would mean in terms of the complexity of making sure all of those locations are factoring into a constantly moving and changing economy.
And if you see, it continues to plummet. So those prices are pretty much falling off a cliff now. From all that extra supply that's been brought on without us having to go back and rebalance anything. So let's go ahead and head on over to Cellin. And you can see that Cellin is in very close proximity to Crusader. So you've got an aluminum refinery and aluminum mining, yet there's very little activity. And the reason is because the aluminum at that mine is very difficult to extract. So let's go ahead and adjust the mining time on Cellin from 180 to 120. There it is. And what this again reflects is how difficult it is to extract from that particular location. And so you see there now, you see a few guys are actually willing to put in the amount of work necessary to extract it. Not all of them, it's still a lot of effort. And this comes back to every one of these guys having their own individual set of traits. So some of them were willing to endure, more risk, more, more effort, that sort of thing. So let's go ahead now and increase the Laranite consumption.
Hurry up a little bit. We can jump ahead to the.
Let's just go with normal pace.
All right.
There you go.
So let's make the Laranite more difficult to work with and more rare and see what happens there. So we're going to adjust the global Laranite refining time from 60 to 120.
We're adjusting the time on Walla to be.
We're going to do both. The global refining time, we want to take it to 60 to 120. And Walla's extraction time goes from 60 to 180.
That's right.
60 to 120. Laranite. So what we've just done is basically make it more time consuming, more difficult to refine it, and we've basically made it more difficult to pull it out of the ground. So let's go ahead and apply a macro also to reduce the default purity of Laranite from 50 to 16%, which means that refineries are going to need more ore to produce the same amount of refined product. Reactive. And now let's go ahead and take a look at the Laranite prices on the Hurston factory. So we just did 3 different things to make it considerably, more expensive for Laranite to be utilized.
Speed up that time.
And you speed it up, and you can see that Laranite prices are going up, up. It looks like they're starting to skyrocket. This could be a complete economic disaster. If you notice, they're just going up, up, up. So what we're going to do now to bring that back into control is let's go adjust the power plant formula to compensate a bit. So let's adjust it from, instead of 2 Laranite, let's change it to 0.1. So we just reduced the amount of Laranite needed in the economy by 95%. And let's head back and check out the prices again. And what we should see here in a minute is Laranite should start to drop off pretty significantly. And there you go.
Crisis averted.
And this will continue to drop if we watch it. You always get a little bit of turbulence because you've already got contracts set up and stuff.
Right.
Go ahead and leave it in. I want to see it drop a little bit more.
We all want to see it, Tony.
So it's already down 40, 50%, and it'll keep falling. Okay. So now let's go ahead and add some additional factories. Delamar looks pretty dead. There isn't a lot of economic activity.
All right.
Happening over there.
This just goes on. But this whole talk is just a look at what they wanted the dynamic economy to be for Star Citizen. And as Lucid said in chat, just because they haven't said they're not doing this doesn't mean they're not doing it. I don't believe that they have canceled this or that they're not doing it, but they haven't clarified really how much of this is still here. So, guys, I don't know. I don't know. When they were doing this, obviously they didn't have Starkitect in mind. They also, things have changed when it comes to the development versus this. This was 6 years ago now. So I'm still waiting for them to give us a little bit of an update on what's going on with StarSim. They talk about it here and there. We're actually going to hear about it a little bit during this talk. I'll touch on StarSim a bit here, but there's not enough info to really know how deep it's going to be. So as far as locations go and points of interest go and how are they going to build more content into planets so you're not traveling around everywhere, that's mostly the summary. And I know that was like an hour-long summary, hour-and-a-half-long summary for those of you who are watching on Space Tomato 2, but thanks for sticking around for it. And y'all in the live show. Now we move on to the next. We gonna talk about, what are we gonna talk about? Missions, I think? Seems like an easy enough transition. What do you guys think? You think they're going to be able to keep you entertained with points of interest? They keep saying player-driven economy. They do. It's a little interesting. I hope that it's not player-driven. I love that player influence for sure, but I do not want to see Star Citizen with a even majority player-driven economy. Do I think this will come online when building and crafting comes in game? No, I don't think that's a guarantee. I do think that we're going to need more solidified values for everything. I'm not sure if we'll have the supply and demand, though. Remember, there is 50 people making star systems. Why are you saying that? Yeah, Daniel, I like that. Mostly game driven. Cause then they can do so much stuff if the game itself has control over the economy. There's so many opportunities for more interesting content over time. Doesn't have to depend on players doing this stuff. Gotta travel everywhere. There are cap ships that are not going to only give 5-star systems. Cap ships need to go to Sol and have the Empire. Yeah. We've not had any recent updates on economy. We do see that stuff on the monthly reports. But there's not really much going on economy-wise. Recently, they were doing some mission design stuff, working on payouts, supply or die, collaborating closely to establish stable and holistic approaches to balance open-ended missions with multiple viable solutions. That might be hinting at investigations, which we still don't have. Did they not have an economy update in March? Oh, I don't think they did. Oh, missions. Missions. Let's see. This is an interesting talk. I didn't really have like a core message with the mission talk. I kind of just wanted to walk through the things they've said about missions over the years. There's really not much. This might not actually even be worth doing. We shall see. Hey, you don't talk bad about missions. %50 star systems over time. Star systems started to drop often. I mean, yes, we're definitely not ending with the amount of star systems we start with. That would be miserable. All right, can we get some better music in here? Chat's quiet today. Come on, chat, where you at? Tell me your thoughts. We need some energy to get through missions. It's missions. Hype me up. Hype me up. We're at birthday party. All right. So. Missions. The contracts of Star Citizen. The things we're supposed to do in order to make money I think missions are really important because these are the tutorials of Star Citizen. I think the real good gameplay in Star Citizen is the sandbox, being able to go out and do whatever it is you want and just live in space and figure out how to get by, make the money, get the object, get the ship, whatever it is your desire, you figure out how to get it. I think that's the gold of this game. But the missions also seem like they're really important because when it all comes down to it, the less players have to go onto YouTube or go onto some blog post to figure out how the game works, the better. So if they can come up with contracts that run you through the processes of learning those parts of the game, that gives you the chance to run some tutorials. It also gives you the chance to make some money in more straightforward ways. And I do think that players, myself included, are not the best at coming up with their own fun at times. So you just you need a little hand holding every once in a while. Sometimes you just want to hop in and do a little of this or do a little of that, or have someone tell you what to do and then do it. So I think the missions are important. Missions in Star Citizen have kind of sucked up until now. We've seen a lot of lag on them. Combat missions using these bunker locations. These have been around since 2018, since Hurston was brought into the game, and they've really been the main location for these kinds of missions since then. Even the distribution centers after coming in have not really stolen that focus from them, which has been mildly disappointing. But we're starting to see more. We have pyro in the game now, contested zones are there, half the locations give you some fun to do. There are outposts in pyro, and there are more enemies outside of these bunkers, thank God, in Stanton at least. So combat missions have always been around. Courier missions are currently out of the game, kind of sucks, but those are probably the best newcomer missions because you can just kind of ferry your way around Stanton and make a little bit of money. The cargo hauling missions are a good addition. Mining still doesn't have missions for whatever reason. Salvage has some missions, and there's a couple others smattered throughout. But the contract situation in Star Citizen isn't the best right now. I wanted to take an opportunity to go back and take a look at kind of how they planned on having missions work in this game overall, and talk about some of the mission possibilities that might be coming up soon that we still have yet to see. I swear I've covered some of these opportunities in 2 or 3 different videos, and we just keep doing it because these missions will not show up. Hey, mission team, I love you guys. You do great work, and I know your resources are not quite there. Investigation missions, though, would just, those would just really tighten my hat. I don't even know what the freaking phrase could be. Let's start talking about, though, looking back at Luke Presley and what he was saying. No, it's supposed to be a good thing. Can you grind my gears in a good way? Brings me joy is so boring. All right, 6 years ago, Luke Presley was talking. We actually just covered this in the locations part, but I want this to be included here because it is important to the idea of how these missions work. So check it out.
Then, the other planets. We want to get...
Oh, wait, we got to go back.
System, which, while good for keeping people moving, and it's also got voted up to see which ones people wanted us to address most. Right off the bat, let's just jump into it. We only got an hour here. Current missions tend to require flying all over the star system, which, while good for keeping people moving and testing, can fatigue the player with long quantum travel durations. What's the philosophy behind having players traveling all over the place for more missions instead of having a group of missions that keep you within a single planetary system?
Always nervous about philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the philosophy going forward is that we try and make enough content to fill a planetary system to keep you there for a good long while. So we're aware, travel times are a big investment and quite dangerous sometimes as well. So what we're going to do is, I take like Crusader, right? It's the first planetary system we built, and I'm sure everyone will be able to see that it's a lot more dense with content than the other planets. We want to get the other planets up to the kind of same parity with Crusader. and
All
beyond.
right,
Obviously.
that is enough for this answer. I just wanted to get the idea that they want to have the planets be the planets. You know, they want planets to planet, and for you to have to planet when you planet on them. So going forward, there are some other interesting answers in here, though. Let's see. Here we go.
What can you tell us about sequential missions in the game? Oh, I think we touched on this a little bit. For example, if I take one of the FPS bunker missions on Hurston, after killing all the occupants, we expect the bodies and find clues that may trigger an additional mission after that.
Okay. There are a few things there. Like there are simple sequential missions that we're working on. I don't know if I want to go into those. I might keep it as a surprise.
The family?
Yeah, the family.
Yeah, the family.
Yeah. So there are simple ones. This one's a little more involved. Obviously, it involves spawn. It's more like a procedural thing, like we talked about before. You spawn something on them, and there's a chance that.
Not gonna lie, I don't think I've encountered a single sequential mission in the game. Like, must have just completely dropped that.
That triggers on another mission thread. We definitely want to do this. I have been planning this in a different context to like taking something off of a body. I have been floating this around the directors and getting okay, I've not got the absolute thumbs up yet, but this is a theory, right? I'm allowed to say theorize. So all ships have on them flight recorders. Right?
Okay.
Right. This was a bit of a surprise. I was listening to this answer so that we could get some mission discussion. I actually forgot this comes up. This is completely out of left field. What we're about to listen to, I am not sure if still true, but this answers one of my biggest questions about how the law system in this game works. So interesting discussion point, even if it's not directly about contracts.
Even Drake ships?
Yeah, let's say so. When you blow that ship up, well, I should say, this ship, this flight recorder records all the things that happen on board. So as a criminal, if I kill someone outside of monitored space, okay, the law doesn't know about it yet, and they didn't catch me doing it. But on the victim ship is the log that they caught me doing it, right. Basically. I was on radar when that happened. So, and if they deep scanned, they could know everyone who's aboard. Mm-hmm. And my ship has the log of every crime that I've committed. So, if I blow up the ship, it might be worth going and taking the black box and taking it somewhere that can destroy it. So that crime is gone. But then on my ship, it has the entire log of everything. So I'm protecting, not only my ship from being destroyed, because I love my ship, but if that was destroyed and the guys got the flight recorder, they could take that to a security depot, hand that in, and not only personally they would get the rewards for every crime that I've committed, if I go and take a big bad guy out who's got loads of murders and stuff on there, I would get a nice reward from that. But he would be hit with all the crimes that have been registered against him. So
that's a pretty wild idea.
It kind of creates this little.
So you can commit crimes against people, and as long as you're not in a place where it gets detected, you won't get in trouble for it. But if security can get access to your records, they can see that you did that, and you would get in trouble for it. So you could technically get somebody in trouble for a crime they committed and didn't get caught for, if you are able to commandeer their ship. Given this system, if they did that, this would be, man, if every ship had a flight recorder, the implications of that, pretty wild.
Ecosystem of a little economy even of and it's sandbox. That's what's beautiful about it. It's sandbox but can be worked into missions.
And just in case you...
So that was an interesting bit on missions. Here is, I think, one other
Bartender
thing
to tell you about that shady-looking guy. He answered that, yeah. Yeah, like where you need to convince a bartender to tell you about that shady-looking guy. Yeah, just all that dialogue work.
Yep. Yeah, needs a...
Keep an eye out on the public roadmap, which is where you find out when all things are going in. Then once that's in, and once it's been tested, and once that's gone through its paces a bit, and I think then you can start developing systems that take advantage of it. So, all right, what else we got? Are there any plans for making dialogue an important part of missions? I think we've already answered that. Yeah. Yeah, like where you need to convince...
That's what we're finally starting to see a little bit more of. I think that's actually significant in these combat missions we're getting with 411. Not necessarily that the voice acting is anything amazing, but just that it is active, it is there. Like I said, combat's always been our oldest contracts. If we're seeing combat reach a bare minimum level of voice acted contracts, then I think that we're going to see that for all of the contracts over time. Hopefully over a short amount of time. But I think we'll start seeing a lot more of this sort of solidified content that's probably going to be in the game for good from here on, which is nice.
A bartender to tell you about that shady-looking guy. Yeah, just all that.
Yeah, this is very we don't know if this is actually going to be in the game kind of thing. Definitely wait until you hear them reconfirm stuff like that before assuming it's still in the game.
Dialogue work.
Yep. Yeah, needs a lot of planning.
Yep. Let's see. We want more missions we want more missions once you acquire a crime stat. That's not a question. Just
okay.
Like more missions. You want to go do that right now, and I'll just take the rest of the show.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out how to answer that.
And we want to give you those missions. Yeah, they did take time. We make one.
He's just trying to figure out how to answer that. All right. Yeah.
It was a super difficult one because we figured that people who get to Crime Stat 5, it's not easy to get to Crime Stat 5. Yeah, well, I'll roll back. Like you can go straight to a combat.
Some of us get there without even trying, yeah. Luke.
You have to be intending to get to the Crime Stat 5, and to stay there is a whole nother matter. You know, you get PvP bounties on you.
No, we don't.
And
not right now. We don't. Have they fixed those? Are those fixed in 411? That'd be great.
You know, all that. It's quite difficult. You get many restrictions placed upon you. So we made this crazy mission where you have to kind of go and take out the Navy. And the Hammerhead, or several Vanguard. So it's a start. We're gonna keep that up.
All right. We're gonna keep that up. I like mission talk. Now we're going to jump to something a little bit more recent. This is from 2022, and there are some interesting topics in here too where they're talking about missions, specifically investigation missions, but some of the stuff that we've been expecting to see, that some of which we have, some of which we haven't, but I think this is a nice little checkup, little midpoint talk about missions and contracts. Don't want it? Don't want what? Handleable data? Handleable data in general, I wouldn't say it's stale. They've talked about it fairly recently. They talked about downloading maps at two CitizenCons ago, I think. And oh man. Now I'm forgetting something else. There was something else that they mentioned last year. Can't remember what. Was it the crafting when they talked about sharing the data of resource deposits? I think that might have been it. But I don't remember. But yeah, they've talked a little bit about handling data, transferring data, sharing it.
On because at Citizen talking about on our YouTube channel, Elliot, you were part of a presentation on about a new mission type called investigations, that moves away from the cargo and trading missions, moves away from the combat missions that we have, and
attempts to move the gameplay of the persistent universe towards a, well, how would you explain it?
It's so when we're building stuff, and because of the scale of this game, we try to build things very modularly, and because we build very modularly, it means there can't be a lot of story injected into it, because injecting story into stuff is very difficult. So this is our way at looking not only at trying to build something modular, but also trying to inject heavy amounts of story in it to really bring the PU to life.
Okay. So right off the bat, I'm going to ask, why investigations? Of all the things that we could be doing to inject story, if that was the ultimate goal, why mystery? Like, why not science fantasy, or why not a science western or whatever? What about investigations drove us there? So,
investigations are the tech that's there for them, like, already exists. So a lot of this we can push ourselves in MFT, and what that means is we can leave other teams alone to do their stuff without us constantly bugging them for a little bit of this, a little bit of that, because all the fundamentals are there. So it's something that MFT can sort of own and just push all the way, and without bugging anyone, doing anything. And it's also quite a fun thing to do. Having an investigation, letting people think, come up with their own answers, potentially talk about it, have different answers. I think it's just a fun game mode.
I appreciate the candor in that answer.
Samesies.
Basically, it's if we wanted to do something else, it would require more people from outside the team and stuff like this, and you wanted to tackle a task that could be relatively self-contained within MFT.
Yes.
So that led us to investigations. Were there other avenues that you guys considered before landing on investigations?
There was a few other things that, we have this sort of, I guess, list of things we'd like to do. But we kind of landed on investigations. It was one of the things I want to push is, on my Siege video, I said I don't like hand-holding, and investigations are very much non-hand-holding, so it's, right up my alley.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a minute.
Oh, God.
How does the division of labor work? Because you just said you want something that you can do internally without the need for a lot of external help. But is all of the mission feature team now working on this, and we're not going to get any other missions for the game? Like, describe to me the scope of work here.
So, no, investigations is purely me making, as in the technical part of making it. Along with an engineer, one of our coders. All our other designers on MFT are working on other exciting things, like Max here is also doing something else, and will continue to while I build these investigations. But, sort of the other sort of divisioning up of the work, there's potentially some work on, like, say, the props team for certain things we might need, but a lot of heavy work sort of on the narrative side, because, like I said, in the CitizenCon, investigation at its core is a story.
So, let's talk scope, let's talk scale here.
Let's talk about how we still don't have these missions. I'm actually really disappointed that we haven't seen them yet, if you could tell by all my shout outs and caterwauling. But they were pretty interesting sounding. This is kind of what they were supposed to be about. Oh, that's loud. Okay.
So the next stage in this whole process is building a pitch. We have to come up with our ideas, how we want it to work, and then we have to present it to CR, Tony, and Todd, and make sure they're all happy with it and all of our visions are aligned. So when we're building the pitch, we start off by going over the ideal experience we want for the player. We start off with the most advanced things, all the gameplay mechanics we could dream of to bring this sort of role to life as a detective. And then we have to start looking at stripping it back to see when we can release it, what's the minimum viable product for this experience.
And in the case of the investigation mission, we came up with two. So the first pitch is extremely simple, and it revolves around being able to find a definite answer, like something that is undisputable. For instance, we came up with a mission where there is a repairman that's gone missing, and you can go to his office and you can find some correspondence that will lead you to another place, which will have his
like work itinerary on there, and they're all crossed off until 1. And if you're smart, you'll go to that location, and should you go to that location and do a little searching, you'll find his body there, and he's been like electrocuted, fixing the final thing on his list. And there's your definitive ending. Whereas the second pitch, it's more about allowing the player to choose when they're done, like when they think they have solved the mystery. And the way we do this is we scatter evidence around the location and clues that lead you to that evidence. And obviously there can be red herrings in there. You can get your answer up to a credible state, which might still be the wrong answer but you can complete the mission then. Whereas if you'd have carried on digging a little more, maybe found a few more clues and followed them, you would perhaps find an indisputable piece of evidence, like, I did it kind of thing, that would get you the bonus for the mission. And both pitches had their strengths and weaknesses. The simple pitch, we could see how easy it was to scale, and it involved less complex narrative work. But we ultimately decided to go for the second because we liked the idea of giving the player the agency to decide when they were done.
So the funny thing about this is he started out talking about modules, and I think that part of why we didn't get these missions as standalones is because maybe they just wanted them to be modules that could go into the other missions we already run, but we haven't seen that either, and they don't talk about them. So I just don't know what to think of these investigation missions. But at that time, they said they were in prototyping phase.
So we're in the prototype phase with the investigation mission, which is more important than ever because it's such a complex mission, and we need to ensure that it's scalable and that other designers can make their own mysteries with it.
With the pitches, we can now prototype and sort of get that gameplay feel and see which one we want to explore more for the player's experience. Some of the hardest points of this are going to be the scalability of it. An investigation at its core is a story, so the story should always be at the forefront and the focus.
So the first stage of prototyping was to prove that we can make it like a mystery happen in the most restrictive location we have, which was like a derelict. So this kind of interplay between the crew of it. From there, we're going to expand so that it takes into account more locations and uses all of the evidence retrieval interactions that we currently have. For instance, like you can kill a guy and get information off him. You can find a corpse, get information off it. You can loot a box, get information off it. And then we'll be
That actually sounds a little bit like how they started to include data chips, security keys, and other stuff on characters to be able to retrieve things from. But that might have already been something they were doing at this time, 2022. We had things like Xenothreat going on. But ultimately, this is, I think this whole segment and idea is probably heavily changed from what we're seeing here, and something that they're trying to incorporate in a different way into the game. That's what I can hope for, at least at this point.
in the newer ways of getting information off of things. We're looking into using the med gun to find the name and cause of death of people, and we're looking into being able to find the mobiles in an inventory and download data from it.
One of the hardest things that we have to figure out is the story. The investigation will live and die by its story, so we work very closely with the writers to try and figure out what kind of story we want to tell, what kind of clues we want to give, and then after that point we look at sort of what obstacles we want to put in your way, keypad locked doors, enemies, traversal puzzles, things like that.
The main challenge for creating this mission is ensuring that the player has enough guidance to complete it without putting mission markers on everything. It is supposed to be about them searching, figuring clues out for themselves, and finding the answer themselves.
We want you to still feel like that detective, but ensure that we're giving you enough information in the ways that we can.
And we're working with the UI designer on the new mobile OS, which should really help with this.
All right, so investigation missions, still not really anywhere to be seen, unfortunately, but that was at least one of the things that they were working on at the time. We could find a couple others. Whoops. Let's see. No, this isn't right. Where am I? Is this one? I think it's this one. It is indeed this one. Okay.
Every time.
Check this out. So, June 22nd, 2023. If I do a Star Citizen monthly report search for, let's say, March 2023. And let's see. So in March, mission team was working on salvage contracts. Okay. The narrative team worked closely with the various design team owners to further develop mission text for several upcoming missions, including salvage, investigation, mining, and some new ones that have yet to be announced. Now, this is March of 2023, right? So we just listened to talk about investigation missions from around that time. We're about to hear them talk about salvage missions from around that time. You're going to see that literally right here. And some of those other missions that they're talking about are going to pop up here in this Inside Star Citizen mission. What I will never understand is what the actual happened to the mining missions that they're talking about here. Where did they go? Why did they never appear? Is it because of the whole crafting thing? Is it because of the resource qualities? Is it because they just got busy? Is there something specific about mining? I don't know. And it's interesting because I think that like that could be a real helpful thing for people, especially now with the Golem coming out, to be able to get newcomers into that kind of gameplay quickly. Don't see any other reports of that back at the time, but in 2023 they were working on mining missions and then they disappeared. I don't know why. Yeah, the missing persons missions are okay, but not quite the investigation that they wanted to do, I think. So here is talk about the salvage missions.
You buy the
that they're
contract
building.
from a contract broker, and it's just a transaction. You buy the rights to salvage, and you can just salvage at your own leisure. There's no risk. So we wanted to add a bit more variety. The illegal ones, there's a timer with enemies, but once you get rid of them, like, that's it. So we added the cover-up missions.
It wasn't because of the saddlebags not working, because this was all done before the cargo refactor. The idea of needing to remove the saddlebags wasn't a reality at this point. It was going to be a year after this, but I don't know if that would have been enough to then stop them from developing the gameplay itself anyways. So this was salvage stuff. Then they talked about some Crusader missions coming.
Platform, Brushwood, Heartmoor, and building those, we essentially got all of the building blocks required to expand Crusader even further.
We made Inspiration Park, which is a whole collection of 4 platforms and a whole bunch of buildings. Then we started doing platform infiltration missions on them. The problem with that is that every time a mission location is used, it can't be used by another mission at that point. It's kind of reserved. So if 2 people do that, that's already 6 buildings out of the rotation, which limits a lot of the buildings. So what we decided is to have several more of these platform parks.
We really just wanted one location that would be for siege. We intended to copy and paste those all over the place in new formations. And that would mean that the siege islands would just be for siege, so that the event and the missions don't have to share the same location. We knew we could then take those islands, reconfigure them, and then just place them all over Crusader.
Using multiple locations around Crusader spreads players out more, which helps the performance. And we kind of wanted to use the planet itself more as well.
I mean, this is like there is a level of content that you can get around Microtech and Hurston that is woefully underdeveloped around Crusader and ArcCorp at this point. And it's because those planets are unique. One's a city and one's clouds. The fact that the only ground combat missions we had going in Crusader have now been removed for this long is a little bit despicable, because you're just getting more and more limited as to where to go for that kind of content. And then we already had it in Orison. I really hope that these come back soon, because these are actually kind of fun. And as of right now, like, if you want atmospheric FPS gameplay in Star Citizen, you're basically stuck either going to Microtech or Hurston. You're not going to be able to go to like a Moon for it or go to Crusader for it. ArcCorp doesn't have their own building interiors or anything. So it's a little bit of a bummer that these missions aren't here, but I did appreciate that we saw some improvement in the FPS mission options with this over the freaking bunkers and stuff that we were doing before. Any idea why they got removed? No. Performance, probably.
The intent was to run Siege for 319, but unfortunately we weren't able to hit that. We ended up in a very awkward position where we had disabled the ability to have the current missions that went out on those islands in 318 available in 319, and we also didn't have the other islands placed. So we just had to turn those missions off completely until we get these new floating islands. So we made the decision to...
And then they came back, and now they're off again.
To add more islands all around Crusader. It allowed us more freedom, like we can tell different stories.
That's the kind of stuff I want to see happen because server meshing is now in the game. All right, here were some additional improvements they made to bunker missions that we were running already. We know all about those. So let us jump forward to a mission that we still haven't seen in the game as well. This is a weird one. This is another very weird one, guys. No talk about what happened to this or why it never showed up or what the heck's going on with it, but this was an interesting mission type they wanted to bring to Crusader. In addition to just help with the FPS combat in a place where there's no ground. Now that I'm thinking of it, it probably is a performance thing. Just all of the missions in Crusader disabled because of performance, but with server meshing, I expect them to come back, and maybe they just need to make them for the new mission system, but at least let us know.
One of the things farther ahead that we're working on is Barge heist. It's basically taking what we know to be popular and fun in this game, so something like Jump Town, but we're making it have a finite resource and a much more interesting location.
What we're doing is allowing players to buy in information similar to how some of the salvage contracts work. And from there, they get the information about where this cargo barge is, owned by Crusader, and happens to be just in the middle of this heist situation where the Ninetales are taking it over and they're trying to take all this stuff from Crusader.
It's the barge that we use in Siege of Horizon, heavily modified, so there'll be lots of entrances and exits. What's great about using the barge is that we can put it anywhere on Crusader, you know, far away from the landing zones and anything that, you know, may cause performance to dip. So there should be no performance impacts.
We've placed a terminal, a cargo terminal, inside of the container interior of the barge. And when players find this terminal, they can turn it on to open various containers using different kinds of ID codes found in the environment.
Basically, you unlock several cargo containers belonging to different companies, and different companies have different items in there.
So hopefully, players will learn which containers might contain what types of materials based on the brands, right? Crusader Industries is transporting completely different types of loot than maybe, say, ArcCorp is.
The cargo containers open all in different rooms around that location. You're fighting over every single box, trying to hold down like a room. There's no way you can hold down the entire thing unless you hold all the entrances. The location is so like so much of a maze. You'll have people stumbling in and out of it, and lots of people wondering, you know, oh, is this person here to steal a box, or is he just trying to get through to the next room?
What we really wanted to achieve with this is give the players complete freedom of which side to take. You don't take a contract from Crusader asking for help, or from Ninetales wanting you to help them to take something.
In future, when we have reputation-based hostility and you can make friends with these guys, they will be your cover. So I can see plenty of exciting PvP action that's going to come from this mission.
Reputation hostility. Someday. All right. That is indeed a brief look at some of the missions that they were working on at that time. But as we covered here, some of them haven't shown up. Not really sure why. Now, for the last part of this talk, kind of look at the current state of missions and where they're headed and what's going on with them. I wanted to touch on a talk from just last year where Elliot and Eric go into some detail about how contracts will work from players to player, from game to player, how the economy will tie in, and contracts in general. And then from here, we'll briefly touch on the missions that we're seeing in 4.1.1, which is why I wanted to have this talk in the first place, and then we'll move on to ship talk. So here are some interesting things. I'm going to try and jump around here to some of the more interesting stuff. That was talked about back then. This is the first one.
Question says, can we?
This is pretty. This is kind of a callback to the new additions in 4.1 actually, and these new collection missions that they're coming up with.
Use our own commodities or commodities that we have found to complete these hauling missions.
No. No. Not like, so the hauling missions as they are, these are tracked, contracted goods. So this company has already owned these commodities and they're asking you to transport them from A to B. However, what that open question is kind of alluding to is more resource gathering missions. So we will have missions where you are asked to just get 10 copion horns, or this refinery just wants X amount of raw iron, and the player can get them by their own means. For example, you could go mine it yourself. You could pirate it and use it for the mission and things like that. So in the future, we will have missions that allow you to get the commodities via your own means.
And you just go to Wish and get the Wish version of whatever you're supposed to be delivering on the cheap.
On the cheap.
Okay, but not in 324.
No.
All right. How will players earn reputation and progress in the hauling missions?
Yeah, those are in with Wicklow. So that was actually a fairly quick turnaround as far as this conversation goes, and we're looking at missions. But I was happy to see that be a part of what they were doing when they brought in the 4.1 stuff. This is an interesting one for you, Hustle.
It's a statement. Don't make a theme park, CIG. Oh, okay. So obviously making missions and everything, it's essentially adding rails to what's supposed to be a sandbox game. This is a forever consideration for you. We hope that CIG don't just put all the gameplay on rails and stop us from making their own emergent opportunities. There's not actually a question there. That's just a statement.
It's just a statement, yes. So I guess the person doesn't like theme parks. Theme parks are meant to be fun, so I guess you don't want a fun game, right? No.
We hate theme parks, dude.
How we see missions...
Roller coasters and funnel cakes suck.
...is missions are, and I know people will take the piss currently, but missions are meant to be more narrative-driven stories in the game. But we also use them as a vehicle to introduce players to the more emergent aspects of the world. So the hauling missions are meant to show players a connection of commodities between locations, which then, like, now they know that this place trades in iron and this place wants iron, and they can look at the commodity terminals and goes, well, that sells for this much, and that buys for this much. I could actually make a profit if I ignore the mission and just do it without the mission. That's what it's there for. It's to expose a gameplay route. It's something we found very successful when we first did Salvage. And Thorsten Lehman loves me for this, but when we first did Salvage, and we put out the hull scraping, in its first release, we saw some people play it, but it wasn't as much of a boom. But when we released the missions, which acted as an easy way to show the players the Salvage gameplay, we saw a huge spike in people playing Salvage, and that's just generally how we look at missions. It's to introduce players to the sandbox nature of our game easily, so then if they wish to break away from missions, just start doing sandbox things, they can.
This is a look at player contracts. I think this is a relatively interesting question and answer, because this falls in line with something else we talked about just a couple months after this at CitizenCon. Looking at this screen here.
Only really.
You keep in mind how these ratings are meant to look, the fact that you get a reputation and rating based on the specific type of gameplay you're doing. So if somebody sends out a beacon for refueling, that rating will be considered. If somebody sends a beacon out for a combat escort, that rating will be considered. And these will work for service beacons, I think, that go towards the game, but also guide beacons. So another player can put out something essentially to give you a mission to follow to help them do something, and then you would pay them and rate them based on how they did. And that's kind of what he goes on to talk about here in this answer.
Player contracts and job boards. Will players ever be able to set up contracts to have cargo or items hauled by other players?
So we do have player beacons. And I know
that's right.
What that current state of that is, but that is
Nick?
a system.
What is the current state? Go ahead, admit it.
Works perfectly.
My AAK, you in chat, dude?
It's a feature, but that's something which we. It's like the economy. It's
non-existent. Oh, sorry. Karen, Nick.
Okay.
Yeah, this is pre-recorded, and if that still makes it into the show, know that I don't value my job. That'll probably still be in the show. I mean, it's just look. We're just going to leave that in because I've said it before. We have the same conversations you do. The same exact things you guys talk about, the same concerns that you have. We say all the same things, just 12 weeks before you do. We recognize that some of these systems still have work to do.
I bet you didn't say gobbledygook. You guys think he said that 12 weeks ago? That would be freaking crazy. If there's a post of him saying that online from 12 weeks ago, I would probably quit.
Still need love. I'm going to ask Elliot about box missions, so don't you worry. So don't take our candor about it as us not caring about it or us not thinking it's important. It's just, there's a very long list of things that we're doing for Star Citizen that we still have to do, that we still have to fix, and that's just us being very aware of it. And sometimes you just have to kind of go, yeah, we know.
If we don't, we'd all be depressed, right?
Yeah.
Gotta have fun to make fun.
So just take it as us being like you. And we understand it, we're aware of it, it's on the list. And just all we can ask for is patience while we try to get to everything. All right, continue with whatever we were talking about. I've forgotten now. Player contracts.
So to answer the question, Elliot, the beacon system is something which provides for players to contract other players, and it's a system we will be looking to expand upon in the future. And personally,
that's this. So don't know where it is. Don't think it's going to come anytime particularly soon. They're just starting to work on like the chat app and stuff, but this is a step towards the social kind of systems that they're trying to develop.
I think that this side of the economy is fundamental, given that we are having a hybrid economy. So player-driven systems.
Yeah, that's Space Tomato. Clip it. Fundamentally said.
Yes. Yeah, it really is. It's.
I wonder if he knew how many times I would be going over that in a stream or clipping it for some video. It's in the middle of such an important answer that we end up keep coming across it. I'm like, I clipped it. I did it.
I don't think I've been, like I said, I'm going on 10 years here now. I've had 100 conversations with Tony and with everybody else who's involved with this stuff.
Oh, George, asked like a month or two ago if you should buy the game. You see there's a free version of it for a few days. Is it full game or no? Yes, it is the full game. You have access to it for free. Yeah, this is a good chance to be able to play it for free. I would. We're gonna have another one in a month, and that one is probably going to be more stuff. But you get 2 months in a row to try and play it for free. So jump in, check it out.
And I cannot overstate how important the player-driven aspect of our economy is to us. It's just things like the player beacon system and stuff. It's just waiting for the eye of development Sauron to turn its eye back to it. Resources to free up, new technologies to work on. A lot of this stuff, it's like you don't want to put in a whole bunch of work when you know this other work that you also have to do is going to invalidate that. So we're forced to kind of sit there and grin and bear certain aspects of this while we're waiting for other new technologies and other new works to come online. But it is, fundamentals are a really good word for that, Nick. Thank you. All right.
So another question I think is kind of important for us to go over here. This isn't as important to contracts. This goes back towards that supply and demand whole Star Sim simulation thing. I don't remember what the answer to this is because there's just so many questions everywhere. But I do want to hear what they have to say about this.
What happens to the hauling mission that nobody takes?
Actually, I'll play both of these because this kind of all goes back to the simulation.
Generation, Star Sim / Quantum was always supposed to dynamically generate missions in response to the activities of players and Quanta. Is this still the plan?
So the short answer is yes. And when we are ready to talk more about that, we absolutely will.
That's what's killing me because they still haven't talked about it.
We'll be the first to know about it. And I mean, the reason we're doing all this now is because we don't want you to have to wait any longer for this kind of gameplay, but everything we're doing now, even though we're doing it manually, we'll be able to plug into the implementation of StarSim when it's ready. So we're not wasting work, but we just wanted to get this gameplay in so that you don't have to wait any longer.
Right.
But yes, the short answer is yes.
You can make a good point. All that work to spec out StarSim, to design it, to figure it out, that's there. So we can so while it's still hardening and becoming ready, we can sit there and say, okay, well, this plugs into this plugs into this. We just fill in our own values based on like the spreadsheets and stuff that you showed on SCL last week, and so we can still build missions without having to wait for it. And then when it's ready, plug right in.
So we can see that from the missions that they're adding. All of these missions are fairly generalized and they could be added to different factions in different locations.
To the hauling mission that nobody takes. It's a good question.
Elliot,
I like that question.
You want to answer that? I think there's a timeout, right?
Yeah. So missions as they currently are, they generate based on eligibility and then they stay around for an amount of time. So if there's a cargo hauling mission, it will stay around for, I don't know, like maybe 30 minutes. And if no one accepts it, it shuts itself down and we'll try generate a new one. There might be changes to that are in the future with maybe StarSim that Nick might want to talk about or might not want to, depending. But right now they just shut down and then they'll regenerate after a period of time.
Talk about StarSim.
So yeah, what missions are available and what opportunities they present to players is a balance that we're going to have to judge as we go with StarSim, because it is a hybrid economy, and that means that player-driven is really important, but we don't want parts of the universe to be abandoned or to lack input if there aren't enough players there. So it will be player driven, but it will be system maintained.
Gotcha. I feel like the timer question was probably a question more for Yorit. Yeah, Yorit couldn't join us here this week. He had a well-deserved and well-scheduled vacation this week. So when we had to reschedule last week's show, it was really disappointing that he wasn't going to be able to do this. But we didn't want to wait any longer. So
I mean, I've got the data open. I can give you a time, but I don't want to because then everyone's going to hyper focus on. You said it'd take 13 minutes.
yeah. Oh my gosh, a number early in development that never
Could
changes.
you imagine? No.
All right. The other thing, this is actually a topic I want to touch on today, but we'll do this next week. Risk versus reward, kind of a big thing. Let's see. Was there anything else here? No, most of this is actually pretty much, we know this stuff. We can look at, here we go. Something like this.
Miners, will there be missions to sell what we mine to something like the distribution centers so that they can then be hauled away with other hauling missions?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, this is the resource gathering type missions, so we will have missions that require them. It says, I know the question is, do miners, like you can steal those goods, you could buy them from somewhere it's really cheap and bring them over, or you can mine them. It's a choice that I want to give the players, so you can choose whatever gameplay you are interested in for this mission. But yeah, we're going to have missions where you have to bring resources to a location, and then naturally that location would then take those resources, produce something, and then another location would then consume what that location produces, and that makes the what do you call it, the hauling sort of mission. Currently, our hauling missions are very static. They're not reactive based on a location's inventory amount. That's something that is something more on the side of like StarSim, because it that will keep track of sort of things like that, so it knows what to generate and what not.
This question just says,
all right, that's about it in terms of mission stuff. And that's really like the overall, interesting song. That's the overall look into missions that I had. I just wanted to look at kind of where they were coming from, the ideas they had behind how they wanted to develop them, and sort of where we are now. Currently, they are releasing new missions on, I would think, most patches, it seems. Like, they're doing them in interesting ways. They're releasing content, so these missions are being recycled. But the specific version of that mission isn't necessarily hanging around. So like Supply and Die was the first version of resource gathering missions, which have now been moved to Wicklow and Rayari and are being brought in as collection contracts. So that's just like one example, I think, of how they're creating missions that aren't necessarily wasted effort because that mission can be used somewhere else, but the specific application that mission gets might be a little bit wasted. That was my point when I was talking about last year how people view dynamic events, or what they have as dynamic events right now, as development going towards something that could go somewhere else. And I'll tell you what, I think that's like one of my most disliked videos. I got so many comments of people saying that I was like a doomer and like just trying to start drama and stuff, all because of that single line about people thought dynamic events were taking effort away from other more packaged content. And I still stand by that. I'm not going to say that is true or not, but I do think that that is a big reason why people don't like dynamic events. And I think that what they're doing right now with this is way better for longevity than what they were doing for the dynamic events. This stuff is stuff that can always hang around in different forms, in different locations. And dynamic events can be like that too, but there's just so much effort into a specific dynamic event that if you wanted to do Xenothreat and Pyro, you'd have to do a whole bunch of it over. And I think that what they're currently doing is a little bit better. Anyways, with 4.1.1, we are also seeing... Oh, this is 4.1. With 4.1.1, we are also seeing these new combat missions come in. And as kind of falls in line with what we've been hearing, these missions use a little bit more narrative. They have voice acting. They are meant to drive you through the scenarios rather than just have you do these over and over again. Like Elliot was saying, this is meant to take someone who kind of knows how to shoot their ship and go through these missions till they find something they really like, and then try and do that stuff in the sandbox, going out to Pyro and finding people to fight. I think this is a great way to get people a little bit better into combat without trying to make them do bounties, which have really, really unexplanatory descriptions. Just have you flying out to random places, not really knowing what you're doing. This has instructions. This follows you along. It has progression. It's a start. It's a start. I don't think these are the most interesting missions, especially for people like you guys who are obsessed with this game and already doing the combat. But we've got to think about all the thousands of people that are going to be joining us after now. And this will make a big difference in terms of playability. It also does a good job of just fleshing out more ship combat missions. I think that we'll see more of these in the next update. Like, I think every single update this year is going to be bringing some type of content that gives some players a little bit more to do. And if you can get a bunch of updates like that, then eventually everybody starts having more to do, which is nice. You still love the comments that I'm a dev that needs to get back to working on the game rather than making videos? Yeah, no, that's a favorite. I'll say this though, for as many comments as come through on the videos like that, there are many, many more comments of people just being like, hey man. Oh, music's very loud, thank you. There are plenty of people who are like, hey man, I really enjoy this content. I love listening to this. I love this game. I love this stuff. And that's who I'm here for. Supply or Die was super fun for you. You did the NPC killing and your girlfriend did the cargo loading in a hull A. Nice. Hell yeah. Relationship goals. There was never anything dynamic about the dynamic events. Yeah. Which is why, yeah, it was always weird that they were called dynamic events. They started calling them global events because I think they also realized that. You like the voice acting on the new missions? That's good. Bounties would be fun if you had to go see a few NPCs about info relating to the location. Yeah, if it wasn't just a go here, do this kind of thing. Is it weird that CIG have been totally silent about Invictus or an Invictus event when we were about 3 weeks out? No. They don't talk about it. They talk about it in the monthly reports, but they don't really talk about it until it's actually here. Like, they will bring it up in this month in Star Citizen on the first week of May. But usually it's just the week of, and then that's when all the marketing happens for it. Yap about the game while magically pulling the related video and timestamp out of nowhere. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to do more of these missions. Definitely we're gonna have to do the higher scale ones with the group and see how they perform. But I think that this is really good for the game that they're incorporating more missions. Even though I'm like a more of a fan of the sandbox and everything, this is how the game builds. This is the foundation of it. Hopefully they can do this for investigation missions very, very soon. But that's it for now. If CIG wants to stress test in the PTU, why wouldn't they open the PTU up to everyone? They're probably still dealing with some kind of irregularities that don't let them get too high, too much higher than what they can do with Wave 2 PTU, I imagine. So they'll stress test, like basically gating the stress test. These missions very much like straight from 1.0 talk. Oh, you know, that's what we should have probably covered too. Yeah, I didn't even touch on the 1.0 panel. That does also that factors into this. Man. You know what? Okay, this I should have covered.
How many?
And I didn't. A little bit of talk about how missions are going to work in this, though, because this is actually a really key part. Thank you so much for pointing this out, Adnan. This is a really key part of how they're developing Star Citizen to get to 1.0. We'll start it from here.
We're looking to do that in several of ways. Now, Rich introduced the main story, so let's get into it. What exactly is that? First, it's a narrative.
We don't need to talk about the main story. That's not even starting just yet.
Or maybe you want to put the story on hold so you can go explore a new facet of gameplay that you just discovered. Go for it. The point is that you can complete it at your own pace. So that's the what. So why do you want to do this? What's the motivation to want to go on this ride? Like Rich said, for new players, it's a great way to ease into sort of the vast lore that we've been developing over 12 years. The gameplay, the locations that the game has to offer, and also give you a sense of upcoming stories that are about to come. But you've been playing Star Citizen for years. You probably know the lore better than me. So what's in it for you? Now, of course, we'll have rewards along the way as you complete missions and whatnot, but we're finally going to offer a big prize for completing the story.
Hold on. We don't need all this. We need the
have been
guilds.
debated in the community over years. I won't get into them. Where is this adventure going to take you? Well, 1.0 is going to include 5 star systems. This story is going to weave you through all of them, but where exactly are you going to go? First,
okay, we know the star systems.
Even in
Sorry, I'm
all
getting
of the
you guys
missions that you're
talk.
going to see on this board, but just for plus. So, that's our main story. Let's talk more about the guilds that Rich mentioned. First, a quick recap. Guilds act as a governing body for clusters of professions and factions with a reputation and progression system that will offer rewards the more you work for them. And I want to call out 2 things. One, I'm not going to have time to dive into all of the missions that you're going to see on this board, but just know that every mission type is either in the 1.0 roadmap or already in production.
So we are seeing missions that fit into this format being delivered this year. So they're clearly wanting to push this into the game. And I think this is a big part of that announcement we saw last year, I think. Early last year, and the narrative team was basically like, hey, we're going to start putting more of our stuff into the game rather than in these blog posts. And I think this is a product of that.
And second, we're also looking to move missions away from the Moby Glass whenever possible. Sure, it will always be an easy way for us to get additional game content in, but we want you talking with people. So,
still not quite there yet. We're still talking to the first mission giver that came in is through an MFD. It's close. You're getting there. I think we will get a physical mission giver in here soon, though.
So to aid that, we're going to be adding characters to represent the factions that you'll be working for that will help sell their personality. Now, they'll still interact with you via the written word, but some will call and check in on your performance. And others, you may have to meet in person from time to time. So let's walk through them. Here we have the first guild that Rich showed, the United Resource Workers.
So we've already seen these people. They started at them, and we know Shubin's in there. We went over this last week. We don't have to cover all of this. We're here for the mission talk.
United Wayfarers Club, and more. Next, you have one of the oldest unions in the UEE, the Interstellar Transport Guild.
And we are doing missions with them. Nothing really with the racing guild so far. We're doing retrieve and research type missions for Rayari as well as Wicklow. And then High Point Wilderness Specialists are actually in there, I realized. They are the ones who offer some of the hunting missions. So they're filling this out. And that's where some of these other missions are coming from. Obviously, with the ones that we're talking about today, Mercenary Guild's a little more involved.
But for our combat guilds, they operate a little differently. See, these two are diametrically opposed to each other. So once you pledge allegiance to one, the other marks you as an enemy. On the lawful side, we have the Mercenary Guild.
So we're already doing, in terms of combat pilot, we're scanning area, we're scanning objects, we're defending location, we're patrolling, we're defending VIP, we're destroying objects, we're killing all, and I think we're recovering item. We actually have a large amount of these contracts already in here just from these last couple of updates, but obviously they need to be fleshed out a lot more. Just the fact that they actually exist is, I think, a good balance. Kill VIP on the Bounty Hunters Guild is also a thing. What we don't really have too much of yet is the operative FPS stuff. Scan objects, map locations, investigate, access data. This is a very interesting sounding section of contracts, but we're not seeing that yet. We do see some of this soldier FPS stuff in terms of defend VIP, defend location. Those are here, but for the most part, combat pilot is really where it's focused, and this is where we're seeing 4.1.1 also add on to. So this stuff's happening.
They represent factions like Eckhart Security, the Bounty Hunters Guild, and even some military contractors. So whether you're pulling together a team of specialists to go assault a ground base, hunting down an elusive criminal, or putting together a recon run to drum up some intel, Mercenary Guild's got you covered. On the flip side, we have the Council. Now, this is a shadowy group comprised of representatives from various gangs, syndicates, and outlaws who mandate criminal activity throughout.
This kind of exists. This is just the other side of the same coin. And I won't say that it's super in-depth or anything, but it's getting there. And that's the little bit that we should have touched on before. A lot of this mission development and talk and tech is going into that 1.0 vision, but we get to enjoy it right now while it's being developed. And we'll keep covering it as more and more gets added every update. Now, we're actually done. Thanks for hanging out for the part 2 of that, because, yeah, I can't believe I didn't talk about Star Citizen 1.0 when we got to that part of the discussion. Okay. What else do we have on the list for today? Starkitect, we talked about that. Missions, we talked about that. Okay, we'll talk about the raft, I think. And then we'll just touch on these 2 threads that I found, which are kind of interesting, I think, interesting discussion points. And then we'll be good for the day. Give me 1 second though, folks. I'm gonna go to the bathroom. I'll be back. Enjoy this music. Thank you, song. It's a nice song, isn't it? Nyx. You want to talk about Nyx, huh? I actually had Nyx on my list. I think we can talk about that next week, though. The good old raft. Oh, this is going to be funny to watch. Alrighty. Our next part of today's talk, my friends, come join us on Mondays if you're checking this out. We do these kinds of long talks about development news and whatnot throughout the day. And these come out as segments throughout the week. But if you're watching them and you want to come ask questions live and just chill, please join us. Mondays, 9 a.m. PST. So today, or rather this time for this talk, we're going to look at where the raft came from. And why is it changing? In 4.1.1, the Argo Raft has gotten a huge improvement. It is buffed its storage capacity to 192, I think. 192 SU from 96. It has also lost its 4 major crates that were kind of the unique part of it. The whole idea of this ship was that it had a crane that would allow you to land, drop cargo, and take off. It kind of reminded me of that quick drop spaceship in the Clone Wars. I talk about this with almost every spaceship I see for some reason, because I just can't get over it. It was a thing that would drop the ATSTs, and you would basically just be able to land, drop off, and then take off real quick. This is our raft. This is our Star Wars raft. Ah, what a beauty. What a beauty. Can you guys all celebrate it with me? Celebrate it with me here. Thank you. Thank you. So that was the idea behind the raft, but now it's changing. Let's see what they were saying about it back then and then talk about why it's changing now.
One of the big roles in both real-world life and in Star Citizen is cargo hauling.
We've got lots of different ships in the game, and plenty of them can carry...
Let me add some context to this, please. So this came out November 25th of 2021. Always a grand old time to see stuff like this happen. November 25th of 2021, if you go back and look at the Star Citizen roadmap for, let's say, November 2021, let's see if that pops up. You will see that there was some belief, some possible expectation. Shout out to Odysseus Ithaca, by the way, for the amazing roadmaps. These were such a lifesaver back in the day. You see here that we had the cargo refactor planned. What? No way. So at the end of, again, that was 2021, right? At the end of 2021, we were under the impression that within 6 months-ish, 7 months, we would be able to benefit from the raft's ability to carry. Now, this was actually a delay. I think if I look close enough, the original expectation was that, oh man. Yeah, okay. It wasn't on the roadmap at the time. So there was really no knowing about the cargo refactor or its specific timing. What we knew at that time is that, you want the links for this? Yes. So this is user Odysseus Ithaca. I'll just give you his Reddit. He posts these. He hasn't posted any in a while, it looks like, but he was posting them consistently for years. Anyways, that was sort of where we were with the cargo refactor. This idea that the game was about to change, and this ship was going to bring in that change. It was going to be a big part of why they were doing it. It was going to really benefit us. And well, you see how that played out.
Cargo, but we don't have many that are small and dedicated to cargo.
And this is where the Argo Raft really comes into play. So the Reinforced Advanced Freight Transport from Argo is a 2-player cargo transport ship.
It's a very beginner sort of vessel. It's got limited cargo capacity, but it's designed purely for the purpose of trying to transport your goods from A to B, while keeping you as safe as possible.
The Argo style is a strong style. You kind of know what you're going to get, and I think that's what helps really sell the ship's feel.
The rear half of the ship is definitely very contrasting to the front. I feel like one of our designers put it best when they described it as essentially an oil rig with engines strapped onto the back of it.
The Raft is primarily Argo's counter to the Freelancer.
Obviously, the Freelancers are far better equipped weapon-wise, but the Argo is far better in the armor.
No way, not anymore. I mean, that's just completely wrong, right? The Freelancer... Oh, wrong page. The Freelancer is carrying 66 SCU of cargo. Even the Freelancer Max is 120. So this thing is now carrying 70 SCU more cargo than the dedicated cargo hauling Freelancer. So the idea that this is a competitor to the Freelancer is just completely gone. They've changed the ships this thing is competing with. And that's important, I think, because again, you look at these ships as exactly what you think it's supposed to be, and whether that makes you happy or mad, it's a risky thing to do. Buying ships or depending on these ships to be exactly what they look like they are at this point in time is a risky bet, because things will change based on balance, based on what the game needs, based on how the gameplay's been fleshed out. And now if somebody made the choice of going Freelancer over Raft because they were competitors, the Raft is suddenly the much better option. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah, the Raft, it still has all of its downsides compared to the Freelancer, but its upside, which was the fact that it carried as much cargo, is now an incredibly big upside. And none of those downsides got worse as far as I'm aware. Oh, maybe. We'll get back to that with the crane.
Capacity. It's not going to do well in a fight because its weaponry is quite small. It has a remote turret that the co-pilot controls that has size 3s on it, and it does have 2 size 1 slots that the pilot can equip something in, although it doesn't come with those weapons as standard. The ship itself can take up to 96 SCU and 3 32 SCU cargo containers that are held on the back of the ship. So at the moment, the cargo containers are actually a fixed part of the ship until we actually get the cargo refactor, at which point you'll then be able to remove them. There are
totally
other ships that are going to use external cargo like the Hull series, but the first one that will actually go out into the universe will be the Raft. It has dedicated VTOLs that rotate to give it that extra lift, regardless of what the...
Hold on, say that again.
Will use external cargo like the Hull series, but the first one that will actually go out into the universe will be the Raft.
Dude, that is so fucking funny. Because the Hull C ended up using the cargo correctly, and the Hull A both used their external cargo correctly before the Raft did. I can't, man. Jesus, sometimes. CIG.
It has dedicated VTOLs that rotate to give it that extra lift, regardless of what the atmosphere is in the planet you're trying to take off from. It's going to be able to actually get out there even in the more heavy atmospheres. It has independent landing gear, the legs, the typical Argo legs that give it that nice firm support regardless of the terrain that you're landing on.
These are all legit benefits.
As you go inside the ship, it's split into 2 primary areas, the functional side and the side for the crew. So the functional side consists of the bridge, the airlock, which has got ship-to-ship docking collar on it, engineering,
I really like the raft's interior. When this came in, it was definitely one of the better interiors in the game.
and then the cargo control cab that's at the rear of the ship that gives you a nice view out onto the 3 cargo containers.
It's kind of like, honestly, it was like the definitive, this is how you should do a small ship interior.
Consists of habitation, which has a nice chow line, a seating area for you and your teammate to relax.
Small to medium,
As well as individual beds that double function as an escape pod in times when you might need it. As well as a fully fitted armory for 2 people that has 2 suit locker spaces for each of you. As well as weapon racks and, of course, a bathroom.
I think the interior kind of was really successful in making sure that every space has a function. No matter where you're sitting in the ship, it feels like a functional ship. It feels like the ship has purpose.
If you think about the real world and how you want to transport goods, if you want to be in and out because that's your job, that's your profession, you don't want to have to open up your ship and let someone come on board and mess about. You just want to drop your actual goods and then move on to your next job, and that's something that the raft will allow you to do.
The reinforced...
Yes, okay, so they don't even talk about... They don't even talk about, like, how this was meant to work. I didn't realize that.
Doesn't come with those weapons as standard. The ship itself can take up to 96 SCU and 3 32 SCU cargo containers that are held on the back of the ship. So at the moment,
not a mention. Was there? Let's see. Okay, now I'm intrigued. Let's get into this. Raft. What did they say about it when they released? Whoa. All right. Maximize payload. No more hand loading crates. You'll be loaded up and ready to go or unloaded onto the next job. Blah, 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 blah. Freight made easy. It hauls serious weight with ease. 3 A32 exterior cargo containers make for hands-off, hassle-free loading experience with an impressive maximum payload of 96. Okay. Yeah, I don't think they ever actually explained how the ship was supposed to work. Wait a second. No way. What about the wiki? What does that say? Okay, it did have a tractor beam. But that's it. There was no real talk about the actual crane working. Why would you choose it over the Freelancer Max? The Raft is designed to compete more against the base Freelancer than the Max. However, it holds its own in that it's designed from the ground up to support the quick loading and unloading of standardized 32 SCU crates. Whilst you can, of course, fit these into the Max, it takes much longer due to its relatively narrow opening. Is it possible to lift and detach preloaded containers with the holding devices at the ship's rear? thus gaining a time advantage when loading and unloading cargo. Whilst not implemented at release, this is the aim when the cargo requires physical loading and unloading. And to be quite honest, I think this is the most crucial and important part of the raft at any point during its lifetime, and probably the main reason why I think this was not a great move on their part. I think they could have still increased its capacity, but there's some level of, it feels like you should be able to just drop the cargo off this ship.
332 SU.
Like the way this looks, it just looks like you can press a button and it puts the cargo down for you. And I know they didn't say that that's the case, but then you go over to the freaking the thing, and they're like, well, yeah, you'll get a time advantage because it has the holding devices at the back. A tractor beam's still nice. Does the tractor beam, is it capable of moving cargo containers as seen on cargo decks, and where does it sit? It said that the tractor beam sits on the rear of the ship to aid with loading and unloading. So I guess you are supposed to use the tractor beam for that, and it's not just its own standalone crane. Does the cargo, can the tractor beam actually grab? Wait, no, there it is! Hold the f up. Wait, this picture. I can't believe I almost just missed that. This picture right here. How do I bring this up? The concept art shows the thing doing the thing. Yeah. Yeah. It's always the concept art that gets ya. CIG. So, yeah. They delivered concept art showing this ship having an automated unloading system. Oof. Oof. And now they're just replacing it with a tractor beam. Yeah, man. That hurts. Like I said, they should increase the capacity of the ship, sure. But to remove the capability of the ship to actually deliver all the stuff to the ground like this is really slowing the ship down from what it could have done. That's too bad. It's balance, and they're balancing it, and this is what they do to ships, and this is why I say don't buy them. But man, that's a big hit to the functionality of this ship. What would be cool is if they still had a whole grid up top here that you could put boxes on, but that whole grid goes down to the ground. Because imagine the speed at which you could operate if you were part of an org and you could fly in, land, drop the boxes, and take off. And the rest of your org is just, they're living it up. They're moving the boxes, they're working at their own pace, but you're still able to go and keep making your runs. Now, you're gonna have to land and sit there and wait for them to pull all the boxes off the tractor beams. And it's just like, I don't know. Taking away that uniqueness of the ship a little bit. It is a lot like the Reclaimer arm. And I'm hoping that with the Reclaimer arm they can still figure things out to allow for Fracture to use the Maelstrom system. But for this, I don't know if there's any reason for them to change this after this. It could go back to a system that allows that to drop off, but why not do that now? I say why not talk about that, but that stuff never comes up. I don't know if I have a rafting game, so I'm not sure I can jump in and look at it specifically how it looks, but with 192 SU of cargo, this thing just got way more impressive. And yes, I do think the price will go up. Because as you can see, they're pitching it as a competitor of the Freelancer. So that'd be pretty weird for them to keep selling it at the price of the freelancer when they've clearly made it a lot better. Yeah, they're losing a lot of physical stuff. Again, I do still think that we're going to get some stuff back because of Maelstrom, specifically when it comes to salvage and fracturing parts. I think that's just what they're waiting on there. But physical interactions have taken a step back, yeah. That's why I was so surprised when I saw we were still doing all the door presses and stuff with our hands. You've heard from a couple raft owners that they're excited for these changes because unloading and loading is apparently faster. Is that not what you've heard? It is faster. Not as fast as what was pitched. It's faster than what we have in game, but that's because the ship was nowhere near its functionality. But this functionality is, you would not be able to get 96 SCU of cargo off of this ship faster than if they could just drop down onto the ground. Now, we don't know if that's how it was going to work. Maybe it had to be one at a time. It could have been all kinds of complications. And 3 boxes of 96 SCU wouldn't be as slow as however many boxes of 8 SCU you're putting on your raft now. But the fact that you're going to fill a whole cargo grid with boxes and then you have to pull those off with tractor beams will be slower than dropping them down on arms. In retrospect, you're also getting more than twice the cargo capacity you were going to have. So it's a trade-off, and it feels like they're giving you some because they're taking some away. No one uses fracture while salvaging? Yeah, it's like terrible. You just kind of sit there and wait for it to break. Wouldn't the raft be more to compete with the hull B at this point? Possibly. Yeah, I don't even know how much the hull B carries. Realistically, it'll be folks soloing it, so it's not a big problem. But nothing else has changed. What you were saying would still have been true before. This still would have been used by a solo player. That player is still losing functionality. For the people who do find themselves on that edge case, the raft is a different ship now because of that. At least for now. In terms of expectations, I always try to set my expectations based on what CIG has said, not what's true in the game right now. But since they have not said anything else about the raft outside of these concept images, and now this thing is gone, I'm assuming that it won't have this functionality anymore. They could always go back to it though. Hobie's 2 times the cargo of the raft. Yeah, this doesn't need to compete with anything. Doesn't have to. Imagine if they added a tractor beam that can have easier access to the boxes if dropped down. So you land, drop it down, go into remote tractor. I would just prefer just a tractor beam at that point. Let me see if I can find a quick video of this. Raft. Star Citizen. Look at that. Evenly.
Hello and welcome back to Star Citizen.
Of course. There's a look at it. You can check out Evenlease. He does a lot of ship-related content. But yeah, it's just a pad, just a flat. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, turning off the whole grid and dropping all the cargo, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I would have hoped that they did with this, but no, this looks like it's very much made to just sit there connected to the ship like that. So, that's where we are. That's the raft. And that's the newest update to the latest industrial ship. To be quite honest, folks, it continues. Going all the way back to the release of the Fortune, we are in the age of industry. I think it'll continue from here, and we'll see some salvage starters. Or a salvage starter. Obviously, we've already seen the concept. And hopefully something for like scanning soon or something like that. Or refining even better. Or refueling. Any of them? Either way, there's our ship update for the week. Our last update is going to be the freaking old video, my old video, which is going to suck. How many ships released last Invictus? Trying to gauge your expectations. I think there's usually 2 vehicles. 2 vehicles released at Invictus. We do need the Vulcan, for real. Matthew, how's it going? Can you buy the Starlancer in-game? I think you can. Is this like, what is this? Lord of the Rings music? I'm not looking forward to this, guys. I'm not. Oh, man. All right. So, as we do during Streamathons, you guys get to elect dumb things for me to do. We do fun giveaways, right? We're giving away a golem right after this. But we also have what we like to call tortures. Mrs. Tomato and you all in the Discord pick a bunch of things for me to do as we reach goals during the Streamathon. And one of the final goals we had was that I have to go back and listen to one of my first videos with y'all. So this is a video from July 1st, 2019. This must have been like one of the actual first videos I ever made. And this was kind of what got the whole channel started. Funny enough, I started making YouTube videos because I felt like the information coming out about Star Citizen was not providing context on YouTube. It was news, but it wouldn't really give you an idea of how far the game was actually coming, because there was no references to what was going on a year ago or 2 years ago or back in the day. That's why this whole channel, all we do is like go back and look at past stuff. It's where I wanted to start out. So I started this series called Retrospectives. It was basically just I go back and look at the videos that they released 1 year prior inside Star Citizen, or at that time around the verse, and calling all devs. And we would listen to what they talked about and then look at where it was at this point during that time. So comparing 1 year ago to today. Now, I think that would be a lot more interesting because they actually are moving faster than they were back then. But back then, I think I was kind of scraping the barrel. So I'm not sure how this is going to go. This could be real frustrating to watch. But you know what? That's what we're here for. Let's get into it. Oh, my voice is going to be so bad. Why did you have to pick this? Why did you have to pick video so long ago? Fuck.
Hey, thanks for joining in for this.
Oh my God, what is that microphone quality? Wait, I remember the microphone I was using for this. It was like this tiny little, it was like a $5 mic. I kid you guys not. Just bought it off some random online web store in Turkey.
You can call me Space Tomato. This is going to be the first of my series of tomato talks, which I hope will help some people learn more about Star Citizen.
Already coining the phrase tomato talks.
Now, what I'd like to do with this retrospective series is take a look at the big features we were covering a year ago and see where they are today, whether they are above and beyond or they've completely missed the mark. I think it's good to maintain some perspective in terms of the progress we are making or the lack thereof. This is something I want to try and cover every 2 weeks, and I'm not going to be going over every single thing that's talked about, but I am going to be taking a look at all the biggest features that are discussed. So without dragging this intro
It
on
literally took me 2 weeks to make a video, and this was like, now we're doing streams and Space Tomato 2 and podcasts and videos. This was the only thing I was doing Space Tomato related, and it took me 2 weeks to make every video. I never thought, I just did not think we were gonna go very far from there.
Let's get started.
I'm very glad it improved the delivery.
On June 18th of 2018, we had a Calling All Devs episode which focused on in-game ship rentals and purchases, as well as insurance timers. The first question I'm covering
The
was
freaking audio balancing and the way that the music automatically ducks during this video, so you can hear if I stop for just a little too long, it starts to come back up, and then I start talking again and it drops down, and it's just, I remember that.
regarding
That's
the
funny.
possibility of purchasing ships in Alpha 3.2 or 3.3. Todd Pappy gave us the answer that the team is working on getting this possibility into the game for 3.3, which they did complete. Since 3.3, we've been able to purchase ships in-game. The catalog has not been large, and it is being expanded in this upcoming patch of 3.6, but purchases were there and are now available via kiosk. 0.6, but purchases were there and are now available via kiosk.
That's totally an extra dub. I went back and recorded that.
Rentals still are not in game. However, they are currently scheduled to be released in a delayed state in a 3.6.x patch.
Look at
hopefully
this.
within the next
We couldn't even rent ships at the time I was making this video.
couple of months. Personally, I'm very excited for ship rentals. I do not grind that much to make money, so the cheaper prices are going to be much more interesting to me.
Shut up,
hoping
man.
To be able to fly more ships and try more things out.
Nah, shut up. I don't rent
Now,
any
there were
ships.
a couple other questions in this episode of Calling All Devs, but none of them really pertain to the main focus of this video, so we're going to go ahead and move on. Jumping forward to an episode of Around the Verse on June 21st, we got to see our first implementations of planetary mining. We got to hear some of the sound effects, see how it worked, the spread of the rocks. Not bad. It wasn't bad at all for our first implementation. Since then, we've seen some improvements. We've seen added animations, we've seen changes in the UI as well as controls. We've also heard changed sound effects.
Still know
Besides
those
these
sound
little
effects.
improvements, we really haven't seen any big developmental leaps when it comes to mining since 3.2. We haven't seen anything that has to do with the Orion, which is our large mining ships, and we also don't know anything about refineries or refining minerals. There are improvements coming in 3.6 regarding the returns of UEC you'll get for mined minerals versus purchased minerals, but besides that, mining's on the back burner, so we
Dang.
haven't seen much improvement.
It's a lot of custom work on this
That is to be
video.
expected, as most of the gameplay loops, including salvage and exploration and repair, have been pushed back on the roadmap again and again to make room, supposedly, for more development in the networking and AI aspects as well.
No, people be like, "Hey, this dude's way too positive." Literally, first video I put out on YouTube, and I'm out here being like, "Yeah, supposedly." Good job, 2019
Well,
Tomato.
it's for Squadron 42, so we haven't really been expecting much production in those areas, but it's not a great feeling to not see it. Next up in that episode of Around the Verse, we got to see some of the weather effects and how the wind would be affecting the trees on Hurston. Not much has been done with that since then. It's still pretty much the same as when it was implemented, but I'm looking forward to seeing some of the updated weather patterns, hopefully for
White knighting so
Microtech
hard,
and
dude.
most definitely for Crusader with the cloud tech coming online.
Oh.
That being said, we got to see some impressive windstorms.
Just a little bit of beating up the microphone.
Coming online. That being said, we got to see some impressive windstorms in the Homestead CitizenCon demo, and I'm hoping that we get to see more of that soon enough.
Oh, dude, no. No. 6 years. 6 years. Then you'll see it.
After that, we got a quick look at the group system, which made it easier for us to link up with each other in the verse. The group system has seen quite a few improvements over this.
We were getting introduced to the group system
last year, including increases in size, stability, and UI improvements, as well as quantum linking. One of my favorite improvements to the system was the ability for anybody in your group to access your ship while still maintaining the locks to anybody who's outside of your group. This made it a lot harder for people to steal your ship on Port Olisar.
Right. Because it used to be where anybody could just go onto your ship at any time. Right? Oh, man.
And while they might not be the big changes that we were hoping for in the group system, 3.6 does seem to be adding some quality of life improvements, including making separate comm channels and being able to name them, being who's speaking on any given comm channel, and getting ship-wide comms for any ship that you might be in, which is especially nice for the 890 jump big boy who's joining the game in a couple of months.
The 890 jump big boy. You know, I think I would probably still say that too. Too bad the voice comms don't work though, dude. Oh man, this is funny.
Wrapping up around the verse, we get to move forward into calling all devs. June 25th of 2018. The very first question right off the bat is pertaining to attachments for FPS weapons. That which is actually quite contextually important right now, as we're seeing some development in that in Alpha 3.6.
Nice. We're gonna get our first scopes, guys.
Now, at the time, weapon attachments was being delayed. According to Nicholas
Surprise.
Monk, the delay was because the system was implemented. However, the assets, the scopes, the stocks, the barrels, there were no in-game capabilities for players to equip these things. So while developers could create the tie-ins for these assets, the assets simply could not be equipped yet. Now the question was also expanded for ship components, which had the opposite problem. All of the assets were already created. The devs knew that
This was like the very first beginnings of fuses. These little subcomponents, I think, ended up turning into fuses at some point.
Components were going to be made to be customizable and swappable since 3.0. However, the system wasn't ready to handle those assets yet, so that simply wasn't implemented, and we
2019, the systems weren't ready. It's like the story of that whole period of development.
Still don't see that possibility in the game yet. I had actually expected to see swappable components in the Terrabin already at this point, but it's still not here. So as of 3.6, weapon attachments have actually seen a big improvement. However, ship components, while they've seen additions of heat and damage and degradation, are still not customizable or swappable in person. You can swap these components out via the vehicle tab on your Mobiglass or while you're purchasing these components at the store. But as far as actually picking them up and taking them out of the ship, you can't do that. Sorry. Can't steal the power plant of that Caterpillar. Although I think the Caterpillar's power plant is too big, so don't try it anyways.
You freaking nerd. It is. But we can do that now. Thank God.
Now, the next question that was asked on this episode of Calling All Devs had to do with the difference between griefing and pirating.
Oh my God. Whoa. Honey, I can hear the call to prayer in this video. You guys hear that? Hold up. Wait, I got to turn that up. I can freaking hear the call to prayer in the background. I can't believe it.
This episode of Calling All Devs had to do with the difference between griefing and pirating. While griefing is a big...
Listen to this. Listen. Oh my God, that is so funny.
Now, the next question that was asked on this episode of Calling All Devs had to do with the difference between griefing and pirating. While griefing is a big problem in MMOs, and this is a distinction.
Oh, it's really, really faint. It's really faint.
Wait, there's hair on you.
I probably only hear it because I was traumatized by it.
In 2019, you must have been at my parents'.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was right outside the window. That's pretty funny. You not hearing
It's
it?
usually hard to make in MMOs. Piracy is a very big part of Star Citizen, so they needed to have the systems in place to make it a viable gameplay option. Dan Truffin was confident that they will have the loss system that they need to make this a possibility. However, we haven't seen much besides defensive turrets or security guards at Hurston until 3.6.
What am I most excited about 3.6? Freaking loss systems, bro.
Oh no. Oh no.
With 3.6, we're getting special locations where you can buy and sell materials on the black market, allowing for better gameplay surrounding illegal items and drugs. We're also getting the first implementation of a law system, which should mark the beginning of the end of people simply ramming your ship on the Port Olisar landing pads or shooting you for no reason with no repercussions. This first implementation of the law system is going to help set up jurisdictions for separate security.
The beginning of a very, 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 very long end. We're still midsection of that ending. Hey, we don't get pad rammed, right? Right? It's because they took away the pads.
As well as splitting the difference between a misdemeanor and a felony, so that a parking violation isn't going to get
Picture Kirsty of Star.
you killed like a homicide might. They mentioned this first almost a year ago to the date in Calling All Devs, and now we're finally seeing it in game. Moving on to a special.
I just have nothing to say to that.
Squadron 42 episode of Around the Verse on June 28th. We start off with a look at animations. Player animations are supposed to now be driven by entity rather than animation, meaning that when you stop moving, your character stops moving. This is something that you can see in the live game right now.
I don't know if I'm seeing it. I don't know if that was the best representation of what.
This is something that you can see in the live game right now.
Like, I'm just looking at this guy running back and forth. You're not stopping. Space Tomato, you're not.
We then saw player interactions with objects around the game, such as books, bottles, and guns. This is something that was shown off at CitizenCon and then implemented into Alpha 3.4.
Okay. So what the reason I enjoyed making these before was because it was like a nice mixture of they did follow through on this and this is in the game and they completely botched this and it's not. And I think that's the story of Star Citizen, but it always just ends up being rather hyperbolic, the conversation. And the whole point of this was just to try and bring some nuance to that conversation. And I don't know if it worked, but at least it led to a YouTube channel.
And saw animations and player carryables, which they've been speaking about improving. We haven't seen that yet, but we do have an update coming in 3.6 that may touch on this. After animations, we took a look at prototyping soft body deformation. This was using standard wall assets and breaking them up to rig them for soft body animations and combining that with the GM Cache Alembic method.
I took so long to be able to say that in the line, guys. Listen to how goofy I sound when I try to say that term.
Soft body animations and combining that with the GM Cache Alembic method.
GM Cache Alembic method. It's some weird tech that they are using. I don't know what the heck it was, but that's what the dev said in the video, so I tried to say it as well. Somebody else might know in chat.
In order to use less memory. I expect to see this in Squadron 42 before Star Citizen, which is why it showed up in this Around the Verse. As we have not seen it in the PU, I don't expect to see it anytime soon, but it's something to be excited about. From there, we checked in with the props team, who showed off some of the work being done on Hurston's upcoming biomes. A lot of this work was being done in ZBrush and distributed procedurally around the PU. These are things that we can see in every update, whether it's Hurston or RCorp, a new space station. We'll see it in Microtech upcoming as well, so you can always expect to see work in the props department going on. Last but certainly not least in this update, we had a special episode of Reverse the Verse Live with Chris Roberts, where he talked about 3.6 and some things that he had envisioned for future updates, which is pretty important in this series. Many of you know that the UI in this game needs some work. One of Chris's first statements here was that he wanted to bring some unity between the different modes, including the standard heads up, scanning, or mining. He also wanted to reinforce the idea that
more detail, Space Meadow. What do you mean by that? Because there is better unity, but what does that mean?
And making changes to things we have problems with. We've seen this with things like the flight model and VTOL, as well as the 890 jump taking design cues from the 600. We also, just a couple days ago, heard that things might be changing for something people have had some problems with. So keep an eye out. It sounds like he's sticking to changing for something people have had some problems with.
Quantum jump times. Ah, yes. Quantum jump times used to be a lot longer. They actually have only gone lower and lower over the years, I think. It used to be a lot longer to get across the system, but I guess also component customization helped with that too.
So keep an eye out. It sounds like he's sticking to that promise. We've seen things like the survey at the beginning of last year that asked us what kind of features we wanted to be implemented, as well as ship surveys to ask us what ships we want next. They do listen to the community, but sometimes it can take up to 6 months to see things get switched around because things are planned so far.
Up to 6 months, dude. Try minimum 6 months. Okay, they can make some faster shifts now, but dudes, you can tell that this guy is a baby, a Star Citizen baby. Got to go through the ringer, buddy.
Far in advance. And we do see quite a few delays when it comes to AI, with no updates coming in 3.6. We haven't seen much over the last year that convinces me that the AI is looking good. There are plenty of job openings on the website that we hope get filled, but for now AI is a little slow developing. So let's hope for more of that in the next year.
Bro, you have no idea.
After that, they talked a bit about how Around the Verse was going to be in flux for a while. And it took a little while, but they finally got Inside Star Citizen, the successor to Around the Verse, to somewhere where I think the majority of the community is happy. But I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. Go ahead and leave a comment and tell me what you think of the new show. Chris then had to answer a difficult question regarding Star Citizen, which is how are they going to get all these systems created with how slow the first one's developing? Of course, most of us have heard the answers to this over the years, but to reiterate, these are tools that are being developed as they build each moon, planet, and system. So as they grow and mature, they hopefully...
Hey, look, it's Castra. Cool.
Will be able to create every planet even faster. Just last September, they wanted to create all 4 of Hurston's moons within 1 month, and they did complete that goal. So it won't be entirely obvious until maybe next year whether this is working. And while Chris said that he thought we would notice in 2019, I think it's going to take a little longer. So hopefully it does work out. We'll see. Finally,
it did not. At least not yet. I think they're definitely building things a lot faster, and obviously that gets better and better as they add more assets. That's what we talked about earlier today. And also being able to actually have a company that is made to build systems instead of the company back during 2019 when they were absolutely not equipped for it. I think that they definitely are going to need a lot more speed when it comes to the factions. That seems like what's really going to hold them back. You resemble that, Roark? They're slow developing. Are they, though? They are in terms of the planets and the features around them and the planet tech and stuff is definitely... That's really what this question was about. This is about the planet tech that goes into creating these things, and they've gotten a lot. Well, maybe this was about the whole star system. But I guess at least the way that I'm choosing to answer it is in terms of the planet tech. At least that's the way I take it.
That goal. So it won't be entirely obvious until maybe next year whether this is working. And while Chris said that he thought we would notice in 2019, I think it's going to take a little longer. So hopefully it does work out. We'll see. Finally, Chris answered a question.
But to be quite honest, that's where Starkitect comes in, huh? They didn't even know it back then.
About companion AI ships, stating that they might be implemented in 2019. We still haven't seen them halfway through the year, but it's pretty important for Squadron 42, so I would be surprised if we didn't see them within the next 12 months.
Wait, did he say that we were going to have them? Oh my god, that's a straight lie.
For 2019, about companion AI ships, stating that they might be implemented in 2019.
It might be. Oh, we might see them in 2019. We might see them in 2028. We might see them.
We still haven't seen them halfway through the year, but it's pretty important for Squadron 42, so I would be surprised if we didn't see them within the next 12 months. There is an update due for flight AI improvements and polishing in
I'm on life support. Killing me.
Q1 of 2020, so that may be the golden ticket. We'll just have to wait and see. And that just about wraps it up for this first Star Citizen retrospective. Thanks for joining me on this one. I really think it's a good idea to take a look back and just keep track of what kind of progress we're seeing over the
Bro, maybe we should start doing retrospectives from 6 years ago. That was soul hurting.
It's easy to forget those little things. There's just so much development. It's easy for things to get lost and for us to forget about things that we thought we were going to get last year and we still haven't seen.
Yeah, them too. Them f***ing too.
Or things that we got and we were not even expecting. I hope to continue this video series and improve it over time, whether that means getting new equipment like a better microphone or adding new features and new footage. So stick with me and maybe you'll see something new.
Stick around,
it'll be okay.
Okay.
I'd like to thank everybody again for joining me, and if you liked this, please subscribe to see the latest up-to-date video I have. I'll be posting this every 2 weeks, and I hope to see you at the next one. Thanks.
Nice outro, dude. Okay. So, that was my first retrospective. Not my first YouTube video, mind you, but the first one I really put a lot of effort into, I guess. And, oh, what fun that was. Honestly, I'm less embarrassed by my delivery and more by some of the things that I said. God, what a youngin' I was. They've gotten better, I think, at setting expectations than what I seemed to get from that. But I think a large part of that is because they don't have to sell people on the things that are coming as much anymore. And this is only something I think has changed since like last year around 323, 324. And because that was so unstable, it hasn't felt super true until recently when the game has gotten better. But I think they can sell this game more with the stuff that's in the game now, so they don't have to talk about what's coming as much. And that's why our Inside Star Citizens have gotten so freaking boring when it comes to things like what's coming. I mean, that's why all of their content this year has really dropped in caliber in the focus on like feature development. Because I think that stuff is not what they need as much anymore to hype us up. So that's helped. I think also not letting Chris Roberts talk on the microphone has helped. But I'm not going to lie, it's still painful. There's still plenty of echoes of the stuff that we covered in this video that are true with the company today. From just expectation setting to the freaking progress tracker and roadmap to things that were even supposed to be kind of in the works back then that are still working now to things that got hype that have not continued their development after that. I think these are things that they've learned from and gotten better at doing in their development, but they still struggle a lot with different things. What is this video? This video's got 557 views. I could put out a video about crackers on this channel now. It wouldn't do better than that. I love that though. I'm gonna have to go back and watch more of these. Look at this, dude. Like custom thoughts and points and timestamps and stuff, man. There were some graphics on here. I was wide-eyed. The first video is... Oh my god! This guy was just starting out with like tour guides, and I was very into cinematics when I first started. They did all this in 12 months or so. Hey man, come on. If that were Chris in 2019, he would have put it on the freaking screen. It would have said releasing in 2024, and he would have showed us a demo of all the freaking gameplay working and saying this was a mission that was going to come out. They shouldn't have put Chris on the stage to say that stuff, but it was better than he would have done. There's at least that. I miss Port Olisar, yeah. Port Olisar was sick. This is good times. That's just good times. But yeah, this was the first video. I mean, that was a very different time. A lot of fun to make. Anyways, there's our Streamathon, one of our final goals. Last goal is going to be later this week when I wear the pain simulator, and we'll see how that goes. Oh boy. But yeah, hope you enjoyed that. You like the old skybox better? No elevators that refuse to spawn ships, so you have to give up on playing until the next patch. Elevators hate us, man. Yeah, that was interesting. That's one way to put it. Interesting. Engineering, crafting, base building coming sooner than you think. Dude, the freaking engineering coming sooner than you think thing is that's gonna stick with me, I think, forever. That one is frustrating. I had a couple of things pulled up here that I was going to talk about, but we don't need to make a segment of it. This was an interesting post. This person said, you get more Align in Mind solo with peaceful BOIP, change my mind. And basically explained how they've been playing solo but grouping up with random teams and getting to play the game, and people have been chiming in. They say you have the choice to work together and maximize efficiency, and while people will tell you, some folks will just come in and kill you, I've had a lot of the similar experience. I've come in and worked with a lot of people, just kind of hanging out. You guys have seen it on stream. We go looting, we run around the level, we just do all kinds of stuff, and it sort of works out. So I think while right now we have a problem with law and different things not really working out, I think it's worth trying these things out relatively solo. But that's it for today, folks. Thank you everybody for hanging out. Oh, we have a giveaway though. That's right. Mrs. T's got something for you. Thank you everybody for coming to that Streamathon and hanging out for the whole thing and showing your enthusiasm and all that jazz. It's good times. We've got the final giveaway to put out.
Join.
We have the final giveaway to give out after we met the goals during the last stream. Thanks again for that, guys. It's big energy. Shout out to Balton for Toes Gang today. And shout out to whoever wins this Misk Fortune with a copy of Star Citizen, right? Ooh, there's stuff up there.
Guns glue.
Guns
and glue.
Guns and glue. Guns and glue. I don't know if that's a good combo. Feels like glue might slow a gun down. No, there's a lot of force behind a gun.
Has won by entering the unique code.
Ah, secret code winner. Congratulations, Guns and Glue.
Their real name here, so I'm not going to announce it.
All right. Yeah, Guns and Glue. Good job to you. GG's, everybody. Thanks for getting entered. We'll probably have a new giveaway starting sometime soon. We passed the goals and stuff. Yep. Yeah. So yeah, thank you guys. 2 of you from GII opened a mine yesterday and mined over an hour undisturbed. Then a group of 22 showed up and not a shot was fired. Nice. That's how it's done. Good job. Love that. All right, y'all. That's it for today. Thanks again for being here, unless they did drop today in Star Citizen. They probably didn't because they're very late with that. They have not. So we'll have to talk about that on Wednesday. All right, everybody. I hope you had a wonderful day today. Got to enjoy the stream. Rio for life. Sorry you just got here, man, but hopefully we can catch you on the next one. As always, an enjoyable Monday with you guys, hanging out and talking about news and stuff. We'll be back on Wednesday with some gameplay, most likely. But I might do a little bit of talking on Wednesday as well. My man Detox is back in game after taking a week off, so I'm going to send you guys over there so you can see some of that gameplay. Let them know I've got to bounce out. We got a meeting to get to, so I've got to get going. Drop the toes in chat for him, guys. Say hello. Show them the energy. We are Toes Gang. Make sure they know. But also make sure they know it's not weird. It's just, just the end of a word, whatever. And for the rest of you, I'll see you on Wednesday. Thanks for hanging out. Have a great day. Treat yourselves well. Eat something you love. Hug somebody you love. Do something you love. Kill something you hate. Maybe not that last one. But have a good day. You're great people. You deserve a good time. I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.